Okay. Okay, I'm going to call to order, please, the City of St. Helena regular City Council meeting, Tuesday, November 12th, 2019. I've asked Acting Police Chief Hartley to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If you would stand and join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And we will move now to the roll call.
Mayor Ellsworth.
Here.
Vice Mayor Doring.
Here.
Councilmember Knudsen.
Present.
Stowe.
Here.
Coberstein. Here.
Okay, now we'll move to public forum. This is where members of the public are entitled to speak on matters of municipal concern that are not on the agenda tonight. Each person's comments shall be limited to 4 minutes. Each person is entitled to speak on any non-agendized item only once at any meeting. Brief questions may be asked by council members, and council members may make requests that items be placed on future agendas, but no substantive discussion or action may take place unless and until the matter properly appears on the agenda. Is there any public comment at this point?
Good evening. I'm Anthony McKelly, live 1125 Cornella. For the last year, people have been getting up to this podium wondering why we have this so-called blight downtown of empty buildings. For 2 years, I've tried to explain that to this council, that it's 2 reasons. High rents at the buildings that do not have tenants in them, and the city's anti-business attitude all through every year that I've lived here and the 100 years my dad lived here. The city has always had that attitude against businesses. In the past, we have had quotas on businesses, how many we could have. Jewelry store came in some years ago. The other jewelry stores ganged up and had a petition to not let them open. When On Divine was in business at the corner of Main and Hunt, they were told how much they could sell their T-shirts for and their sweaters. Stores were banned from opening in St. Helena if they sold to the tourists. This is all the history in St. Helena. In my own buildings, I'm interested in 2 buildings. We have the ice cream store, Chocolate on Hunt. A few years ago, when that building was empty, we had a tenant who, we are a 12-seat restaurant also. Our use permit says that. Our tenant, we had a new tenant, wanted to put in a sandwich shop, serve soups, salads, and maybe nachos or something. Then our city planner, he's gone now, but whatever, said that it would take a use permit, 6 months, lots of money, and we're still going to deny you when we're done. Bad attitude. Our building on Main Street at 1351 where the Saint is. Previous tenants had a use permit there for olive oil and wine tasting. We had 2 olive oil companies in there since my dad was there for 35 years with his bar, the pastime. When the Saint came in and just wanted to do wine tasting, though, it wasn't allowed. We had to go back and have a minor use permit amendment, even though our use permit said we could do olive oil tasting and wine tasting, because I guess he put too many tables in there. And then when he wanted to sit outside, he had to take some tables away. So it's just been this negative attitude. And finally, years ago, I had a city planner tell me, why don't you listen to us citizens? Because if we listen to you and we do what you want and we get sued, we're on the hook. But if we let a consultant do it and tell us and we get sued, he's on the hook. It was a previous city. It's true, Mary. So last year, the city commissioned this report, this Cosmot report, and I recommend every citizen here to get it. It cost you $3.50. And the reason was, it was a St. Helena downtown rental analysis. They came up with 7 reasons why we have vacant stores. Number 1, city should consider resolving anti-business reputation and image through marketing branding. Number 2, establish tie-ins with downtown merchants, culinary institute, and wineries. Number 3, consider concept of monthly or more frequently community events in downtown, example, First Friday, art walks, music. Number 4, consider high image formless stores, because we cannot have a formless store in St. Helena. I don't know if people realize that. The Chinchero family tried to bring in Smith Hawkins years ago. People loved Smith Hawkins, but they didn't want it in St. Helena. We need to create more experience such as shoppers for pop-ups. This is the only thing the city has done, which I think is wrong, to businesses that are already established. You're letting somebody come in for a year to get a free ride, but it does fill that. And I'm not going to go through the rest because I only have 14 minutes, but we only have 2 areas in town that don't have businesses in now. They're the most expensive stores in town. Most people charge $3 to $4. They're $8 to $10. And the only other place is down at St. Helena Plaza. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? Yes, please come up to the microphone.
Hello. My name is Barbara. I live down on Hunt Street, the senior complex at Woodbridge Village. I would like to see the city truly get better involved with a lot of the, how should I put this? Well, this concerns Carlos, our arborist for the city. I would like him to communicate better and to stay on top of people who don't take care of private property. I particularly I'm at the end unit in our complex near the Sulphur Creek, right on the edge. And last year, this month, it's been a year, the top of a huge redwood tree, I mean, literally had grown 100 feet up, and it split off into 2 sections, and the top fell, one side of the top fell, and it impaled the people behind me whose house borders Star Avenue. They would be the first house on the left going north on Star right after you cross over the creek bridge. It impaled their garage, and it really did a lot of damage. Now, my owner's known about this, obviously, for a year. They put it off and put it off, but I know it's private property, but I would like to see the city get more involved with these owners who put things off, because 2 weeks and 2 days ago, which would be 2 weeks ago this last Sunday, another section that was about 70 feet flew off in that big windstorm we had. I mean, literally a foot more, it would have been impaling my bedroom. Let's put it that way. Now, it happened on a Sunday morning, so the very next day they got somebody out there and cut all that tree away and got rid of it like nothing had happened. But it scares me that there isn't enough communication. They have given me at least 2 to 3 different notices now that Pacific Tree Service was going to come in and cut that tree down. Now, they've known about this, but it took something as serious as what happened 2 weeks ago to finally get a permit, I guess, issued. Now, what she told me, the lady back there, she told me that I guess in September, one of the tree services had put in for a permit, but something wasn't good and Carlos wasn't going to okay it. So it got put off again until 2 weeks ago when that big section almost went in to my bedroom. I have pictures of how bad it was. Now, they knew how serious it was a year ago, but then when this happened, I guess they switched tree companies right away, got Pacific on it, and I've had 2 notices now since November. I think she said they put in for their second permit, or their first permit on the 5th of November. I've had 2 notices that they're coming to do it, and every time I get ready to leave my apartment and move all my precious things to the front of the apartment, they cancel again. Now I found out from her today that there has been no permit okayed yet until probably this Friday finally. Now, I really don't know if this involves you that much, but I'm thinking that why don't we get him connected with these private owners like the people that own my complex? You know Woodbridge, you've been there. Why don't he stay on top of these people, even though it is private property? My life's been in danger now for over a year, and this last time scared the heck out of me. I mean, we had branches impale my roof on that corner of my property. The tree fell The section that fell, and again, it was about 70 feet of wood, and the trunk just crumpled the cover I had over my patio, and it was just all these jagged edges and branches everywhere. Is that my time up?
Yeah, so...
Okay, but is there some way we can
what-
keep on top of these private owners?
Why don't I find a way to follow through with you, and we'll see what we can talk about.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Good evening, Tom Belt. I hope all of you saw the beautiful moon tonight. Man, it was, I don't know if you saw it, just rising in the east there. It was just gorgeous. It knocked my socks off. But I'd like to just, following up on what Mr. McKelly said, to remind the City Council that in the Cosmount report, the city spent $24,988.86 to get that project done. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, any additional public comment? I'm going to close the public comment period, and we'll move on to reports by staff and City Council, future agenda items, and AB 1234 reports. And I will begin with our City Attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council met in closed session, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you. City Manager?
No report tonight.
Finance Director?
Thank you. I just wanted to give an update to the council as well to the public. As a reminder, we will be transitioning to our bi-monthly utility billing starting in January. So we have been sending out notifications in your billing inserts. They are also going out via the city's email system. It's on the city's website. So if you have any questions on the bi-monthly billing transition, please contact us at the Finance Department, as well as just a notification that if you'd like to sign up for the level pay plan, there is a deadline of January 15th. So I just want to make everybody aware.
Thank you. Our City Clerk?
Yes, I would just like to talk about some public records efficiencies that's been going on in our office. And the scanning project has just been phenomenal. And I really appreciate the support from the mayor and council. What's on the screen right now is our building plan sets, building files, and then planning files, and we go down. Here's some more planning files, and here's some historical records. And so to date, the city has approximately 50,000 large format plan sets, which a plan set could be anywhere from 1 page to 150 pages. And that roughly equals about 600,000 square feet of plan sets that have been scanned. That's actually about 25,000 pounds of plan sets have been scanned, nearly 2 million images that we have gotten scanned. We have about 27 historical record books. They're all beautiful leather-bound record books of varying sizes, which contain about 10,000 pages and images that have been scanned. About 12,000 pounds of standard size content, which would be the file folders, and this is nearly equates to be about 4 terabytes of data. So I just want to share. So with these efficiencies, it's really been helpful for staff to be able to have searchable content. And then also, it's also helpful for the public. There's some really neat information that's been scanned and publicly available on our website. So our public records actually have gone down because there's now self-service. So people can search 24 hours a day for information. So something else I'm really excited to show is from our home page. If you would like to search any of this information, you go to the City Clerk page, go to City Record Search, and something I'm so delighted to share with the council and the community is we now, let me go over here. So when you go to City Record Search, it's going to take you to our Laserfish portal. And I'm in the resolutions and ordinances and minutes, and here is the year 1876. This is a beautiful leather-bound ordinance book. And I want to say thank you so much to Dash Data, who has done our scanning, because we got to capture these scans without breaking the spine of these beautiful books. And so I want to show you the very first ordinance for the city. This is ordinance number 1, and it's on our website currently. So Just a big thank you for your support, and I'm just delighted to be sharing this information with the council and community. So.
That is pretty amazing. Ordinance number 1. There it is. Yeah, remarkable.
So we're gonna more and more content is going to be provided on the website. So just keep checking back and seeing all the new stuff that's going to be available to be searchable and viewed.
Very good. Thank you. So I'm wondering if we have any reports from the library, Parks and Rec, or Police Department, or Fire? Not tonight? Okay. And then we'll bring it back up to planning.
Nothing to report.
Public Works.
Nothing to report.
Mr. Knudsen.
Nothing to report.
Ms. Chateau.
I'll report on the countywide climate change group that we now are meeting with. The mayor and I are both on that, along with all of the other cities and town, Yountville, the town, and also the county. We all sit on a committee looking at climate change and what we can all do together. At our last meeting, we chose a chair, which is Supervisor Pedroza, and then also a vice chair, which is Scott Sedgley, isn't that right? Of Napa, for a larger city that was represented. And the committee is called the Climate Action Committee. So now we need to move forward on what action we can take. And at the next meeting, we're going to be hopefully talking, we talked about wanting on the agenda, how are we going to fund a person that can help us come up with what can we actually do. So that's coming up. And if you're interested in that, you can find the committee and the agendas should be on the county website. I know that the committee's listed there. I haven't seen the agendas yet, so hopefully that'll be coming in the future. We plan to meet next month.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Koberstein?
I just want to raise an issue that was raised by the editorial board recently, which had to do with vaping. And I occasionally get smoking-related information from Bobby Manette, who you all know, who is a member of the Planning Commission, and she's also part of the Napa County Tobacco Coalition. And previously she had sent me articles about vaping, and it seems to be very much becoming a public health issue. And I would hope that maybe we could find some time to look at it and make some further amendments, whether it's to our smoking ordinance or whatever. Possibly with regard to banning sales. I don't know if anybody else is interested in moving forward on this.
I would support that, and I'm going to be going to a meeting on this coming Monday at 9 a.m. if you'd like to join with public health officials and some school officials to talk about the vaping issue. I've been getting emails from kids at school as well with concerns, so I would be very much in favor of pushing forward on that, and if you would like to attend that meeting too. Mr. Dorian? Okay, I've got a few items. I was at the Climate Action Committee at the county as well. I think we're moving forward well with that. One of the things we can think about here in St. Helena that will help in many ways is if we can consider slowing down as we drive through town, particularly as we're going through school intersections. The more we slow down, the more we as drivers sort of change our approach and our attitude, the safer it is for bicyclists and pedestrians. So if we all work together from both sides, both the cycling and walking side as well as the driving side, we can slow down and get more cars off the road and begin this sort of cultural change. So that's one thing we can do, and for the safety of the kids at the schools particularly, is to slow down as we drive. So a couple of things coming up, just want to bring up. We're going to continue with our preparedness programs. There's a neighbor-to-neighbor network, some meetings coming up starting this weekend on Sunday from 1 to 3 p.m. at the Catholic school in Spanish. We're going to do a neighbor-to-neighbor network meeting. This is to help people understand who's in their neighborhood and how we can all help each other, identifying block captains so communication is smoother during any time of emergency. So this Sunday, 1 to 3 p.m. at the Catholic school, that's in Spanish, and then in English will be next Tuesday evening from 6 to 8 at Grace Church. And also we'll be working on putting together the neighbor-to-neighbor network, and Ms. Chateau has been working hard on that with a number of others. So That's next Sunday, or that's coming Sunday and Tuesday. On Thursday night, there's going to be a presentation at the library from the Susquehanna Intertribal Council, and that's at 6 p.m. And that is going to be, I have the announcement here. Sorry, it'll just take me a moment here to bring it up. This is to learn about local Native American tribes and see beautiful Pomo regalia items. Susquehanna Intertribal Council is a community-based organization located in the Napa Valley that is dedicated to preserving human rights for indigenous people by linking with other NGOs around the world. This event is fun for the whole family, and it will be at 6 p.m. at the library on Thursday. Then on Saturday, we have the Dios de los Muertos event that was postponed from the 2nd because of the PSPS and the fire. That will be at Napa Valley College this Saturday, November 14th, from 12 to 4. And then finally, I want to put out a thank you to our staff, to our emergency services, going back to the PSPS and the fire events. Our staff, the emergency services, did an amazing job, and I want to particularly thank the police dispatch in terms of helping the community stay informed. So a big thank you to everybody for helping us stay focused and getting through that. And with that, I will then move on to presentations and public recognitions. We have two, and I'm going to move up to the podium. These are both, I'm very excited to read both of these. So we'll begin with a proclamation on Arbor Day, and this will be presented to Carlos Uribe. Now, the official proclamation is on its way, but I'm going to read this and we'll... So, this is City of St. Helena Proclamation Arbor Day. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products, and whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community, and whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal, and whereas the City of St. Helena has been recognized as a Tree City USA by the National Arbor Day Foundation for 20 years and desires to continue its tree planting practices, now therefore let it be known that the City of St. Helena has declared the 21st day of November 2019 as Arbor Day and will be holding tree plantings in recognition of Arbor Day for the purpose of expressing our support for efforts to protect our trees and woodlands. Jeff Ellsworth, Mayor, City of St. Helena.
Other than inviting everyone to Arbor Day, if you're able to make it, again, it's going to be the 21st. It's a Thursday. We have a tentative time now set for 10 a.m. as we're waiting for confirmation from the school that helps us send some kids down there and plant. Location would be just west of the Signorelli barn. We have a nice little open space there that we're going to be prepping to plant. Not sure yet what we're going to plant, but at least 4 to 5 trees in that area fit. Just nice to kind of complement the large oak that's adjacent to that side. So if you're able to make it, we'll see you guys there.
Thank you. Okay, we will move on now to our Stevenson Day proclamation. This is very exciting. I'm a big Robert Louis Stevenson fan. City of St. Helena, and Barrett, if you would like to join us, the director of the Stevenson Museum. City of St. Helena, proclamation in recognition of Stevenson Day, November 13th, 2019. Whereas the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum was founded 50 years ago in 1969 and has grown into the largest publicly accessible collection and educational resource for the study and appreciation of Robert Louis Stevenson, author of such classics as Treasure Island, A Child's Garden of Verses, and Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, among others. And whereas the RLS Museum has continued to serve the community of St. Helena as an educational resource for scholars, students, and visitors to Napa Valley interested in the history of Stevenson in the area, his life's work, and his lasting impact on literature, entertainment, and language throughout the world. And whereas November 13th, 1880 is Robert Louis Stevenson's birthday, now therefore let it be resolved that I, Jeff claim November 13th as Robert Louis Stevenson Day in the city of St. Helena, California, dated November 12th, 2019.
Good evening. My name is Barrett, Dahl, and I have the great privilege of serving as the executive director of the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum. For over 100 years, Stevenson has been entertaining and inspiring generations of readers, writers, and artists with his collection of classic stories and characters. A colloquial part of daily language, his words and images have found relevance in the 21st century as easily as they had in the 19th. Today, on the eve of what would have been his 169th birthday, I'd love to see what he looked like. I am honored that the city and community of St. Helena have chosen to honor this beloved author, not only for what he has brought to the world, but for the gem he has left us here in St. Helena. While many may not realize the daily presence of Robert Louis Stevenson on their everyday lives, his words and his love of the then burgeoning Napa Valley and its people can be seen daily in the eloquent statement, "And the wine is bottled poetry." For thousands of residents and visitors to this region, Stevenson can be found in the cultural terroir and treasure that is St. Helena and the Napa Valley. For 50 years, the RLS Museum has had the great honor of preserving and sharing the legacy of this great man and his great words with people from all over the world, a responsibility we look forward to continuing for the next 50 years as we grow with this great community. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, staff, volunteers, and friends of the Robert Louis Stevenson Museum, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to the city and the community of St. Helena for the honor of Stevenson Day and the recognition of Robert Louis Stevenson, the museum, and our role in the community of St. Helena. And I just want to say tomorrow we are celebrating Stevenson Day at the museum. Treats and activities are going to be at 4 o'clock. And if you'd like an ED-led tour of the new gallery, will be at 5. So please come and celebrate with us. I have cupcakes. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. We will move now to our staff. Ms. Smithies.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to, from the last 2 weeks, we're meeting with the regulatory agencies this Thursday, our consultant and Spring Mountain Vineyards and the city, as well as regulatory agencies, where we're going to present the key details of the new design for the entire project as we're doing and get agency feedback and buy-in. We're going to discuss the project goals, the permitting plan, and review the project schedule, because the goal is to get this built next year. And hope to have an update in the next 2 weeks on the status of the outcome of that meeting this Thursday.
Okay. Are there questions at this point? We're feeling good?
A couple of citizens have asked me, it's sort of complicated, I understand, but is there a way that they can participate in this, Ms. Ahmann Smithies, or is it something where we just have to report to them?
As far as how do they want to participate, I guess
Watch
the question.
Is there some sort of a public forum for your interaction with these other agencies, or is it not appropriate to have citizen engaged? Because if people have asked me, I don't know what to say.
It's a working meeting. It's like I'm just looking at the agenda right now, and it's very cut. It's not really for a public comment. It's a drill by drill meeting of what we're discussing and the outcomes. But if there is an opportunity, I'll bring that up on Thursday on the future meetings. But I'm not.
People care.
They do, I know.
So if there's an opportunity for them to sort of understand, and maybe this is a completely wrong way to do it, but if there's a way that they can maybe not participate is the wrong term, but be more understand the process better by being there, or I don't know, but it's just a question for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, and then we'll move on to 7.2, which is an update on the wastewater treatment plant.
As I just stated about 2 weeks ago, we had a draft concept plan and a revised cost estimate of $12.5 million to bring the project, complete the project, the phase one upgrades, which is the package plant. We met internally to discuss the financing options of the project and hope to bring something soon to the council as we have a recommendation for you.
And excuse me, when was the meeting?
This past week.
This past week, okay. And so we can anticipate something coming up soon with some more information on
A more solidified update, as well as we have the consultant working on the bridging documents, which are going to be the draft RFP for design build.
Okay. Any comments?
Could you just address a little bit where we are on the schedule and when we would actually construct the work?
The goal is to get someone on board by spring of 2020, start the full design process. They have to have regular check-ins with the water board, water board, and then before they can start constructing the package plants. Are actually they're designed and they're manufactured in Central Coast. I believe it's Arroyo Grande, so it's in California, which is good news. The Cloachina plant, so they think that those could be manufactured. They're probably a 20-month process, but I'd have to solidify those dates. But probably construction, I would say 2021.
And as far as I know, the water board is totally on board. With the schedule that we're operating on.
Correct.
Thank you.
And we're keeping them well versed and up to date on where we are.
Okay, seeing no other questions, we'll move on now to our consent calendar. Members of the council or the public may ask that items be considered individually for purposes of considering alternative action. Unless that is done, one motion may be used to adopt all recommended actions. So I'm going to read the numbers going through. If anybody is interested in discussing one, we can pull it. I'll start with 8.1, 8.2. Yes, okay, so we're going to pull 8.2, 8.3, 8.4, 8.5, and that's the consent calendar. So I would entertain a motion to move all those items except for 8.2.
I move that we approve all of those items except for 8.2.
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Chateau?
Yes.
Kupperstein?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dory?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. And so now 8.2, do you want to come up and ask or let us know the question, please?
Anthony McKelly, my only question is, last time I was here, you were going to maybe just do the flat roof, and you rejected the whole roof. So I'm assuming you went back and looked at it, and now you're going to do the entire project?
Ms. City Manager?
The project in front of them for award tonight is the flat roof only portion of the project as directed by council. It still had abatement issues with it, and then concerns of the skylights were also brought up during the pre-bid meeting on this round.
So what was the total cost of the entire roof then? This is $186,000. If I see this amount right. How much was the whole roof then if this is just the flat roof?
The whole roof bid was $600,000 on September 11th for a total project of approximately $700,000.
Okay. And there'll be a guarantee by the roofer that by just fixing the flat roof, because I used to be in this business because I was a general contractor, that when you do a flat roof, you got to do the tie-in above it. So what happens if after you do the flat roof, you do the tie-in and it leaks still? Are they going to come back and fix it, or are you now going to have to go fix the above roof? Is there a guarantee that this is going to fix the leak?
There is no guarantee that the flat roof was the entire portion. We were waiting to find the results of the rest of the Nolan Tam report and come back to council potentially in the spring for replacing the entire roof. Part of the cost escalation in September was the short amount of time to do that large amount of surface space on the pitched roof.
And you're going to do the structural issues too at the same time, which I think caused this leakage problem inside with the building spreading, which was, I think, part of the reason you have this leak problem, because there's too much weight upstairs?
The leak problem is fully associated with the aging roof and the failed synthetic shingles.
Okay. So we might spend $186,000 and might not fix the problem then. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so I will take then, if there are no other comments, do I have to open that up to public, additional public comment? Is there any additional public comment on that? Seeing none, I will close that, bring it back to the council, and if there's no other comment, if there's a motion to move this forward.
Can we discuss?
Yeah.
I'm not an expert on this at all, but it's staff's strong belief that if we don't do this essentially $200,000 fix, we'll have water in the building again this winter. And so even if this is temporary, meaning that we have to redo the roof entirely next year, that it will have been $200,000 well spent. Is that correct?
No, as I understood it, there's this full amount to do the roof. We're choosing to do the flat roof first, hoping that that's where the problem is. We'll have to probably do the whole roof anyway. We know that. But we're going to do this part first, and it's not wasting the money. We'll just know that we have to do the other part also, but we're saving that for later. Does that make sense? You're looking at me like that.
Nope. Knowing that we have a working window here in which to try to accomplish this first step.
Correct. It's a 30-year roof, and the synthetic, because we only have the current budget was $400,000 on the project, so we would need to rebudget additional funds for next year or in the next building season, construction season.
Mr. Knudsen, is there any other comment? No. Okay, so is there a motion on this item?
I move we adopt a resolution awarding the St. Helena Library Roof Replacement Capital Improvement Project to Central Roofing in the amount of $186,141. Authorize the city manager to execute the construction contract with Central Roofing, and authorize our Director of Public Works to approve change orders not to exceed 10% of the contract amount.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call, please.
Councilmember Koberstein?
Yes.
Chateau?
Yes.
Knudsen?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Doring?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. So moving on now to past public hearings, seeing none, we'll go to old business. I was thinking that if there were young people here to talk about the curfew issue, to move that up, but I'm not seeing anybody here for that item. Oh, okay.
I'm just kidding.
Okay. I see a lot of young people here. I'm not saying, but nobody from high school age. So we'll leave that where it is, and we'll begin with 10.1, which is receive and discuss presentation on civic institutions, massing concepts, and cost estimates, and provide direction regarding optimal timing and focus of next steps. This relates to the Nolan Tam report, and I will pass this on to the city manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we're continuing the discussion to advance conversations related to the replacement of City Hall, library improvements, and also possible community or recreation space. And so on August 26th, the council held a public workshop to discuss concept site options for the library, City Hall, and these conceptual community or recreational facilities. And direction was provided to further study 4 options. And these are really plug-and-play type data that you will receive tonight in terms of cost estimates. Direction was also provided to provide massing sketches. So on November 4th, last Monday, the council had a preliminary conversation about process related to eventual discussions on site selection, funding, etc. And direction was provided to move forward on a form of citizen-based expert task force panels, which we will further define most likely in a public workshop, in a council workshop in the coming weeks, and advance once that's finished. So no decisions on site selection, costs, funding strategy, et cetera, are scheduled for tonight. Tonight, Janet Tam and her team at Nolan Tam will be providing information related to cost in these massings. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Janet.
Let's see, is it on? Yeah. I wanted to say how happy we are to be back again. I'm Janet Tam. I'm joined by Trina Goodwin, our library architect, and also Tom Beal in the back, our project architect. And as Mark said, we're here to update you. If I can, I know, to turn it on. Update you on our progress to date and pick up where we left off last time. As you know, we have been developing 4 master plan options. We're bringing you 3D massing, which means a little bit of the character, what these volumes will look like, and also our conceptual cost estimates for all 4 schemes. And tonight, as Mark said, we don't need any decisions from you tonight, but we would love to have your comment as well as the community's comments and any kind of input. So with that, I'm going to move through our master plan options. And yes.
I just want to clarify something for the public. I think before you get into the options, these are the options from Nolan Tam from the direction that we've given. But there's still other options that were presented by the Shade Committee that are still on the table as we discussed. So these are the Nolan Tam options. And so I just want to clarify that for you.
Okay. We also did work. We feel like we built upon the information that the SHAPE report provided. It was very much part of our initial study. So many of those ideas have been incorporated into these schemes as well. But it's true, these options have been developed in our firm along with community input and the steering or task force committee. So the first option, which really we looked at early on, and then out of the last council meeting, we put more effort into this scheme. We're calling it it's the new library on Main Street scheme, and the next 4 images will show you sort of the whole master plan concept, so that it's not just one site, but how all 3 buildings, which include the library, the city hall, and a park and rec facility, all sort of fit together. So I'm going to talk to you about it at the master plan level first. So this particular scheme is different from the others because it does develop the existing city hall site next to Lyman Park. I'll go into more detail about that in following slides, but this particular scheme doesn't have to go into, it's not encroaching into Lyman Park at all. It's really just constricted to the city hall site. And you can see by that red line, that's sort of a rough idea of where the property line is. What it does require is that the city hall move from the library, move from the city hall site to the existing library. And that's what the middle picture is. And then for every option of the 4, we are proposing at some point as part of the master plan a small new building at Crane Park to provide for much needed program spaces and offices for Park and Rec. So that's the first option 1. Whoops. Option 2. The next 3 options, in fact, will all be focusing on the development of the library lane site. And so this puts the library, stays where it is, but it's a renovated library. The existing library, I don't expect you to keep all these numbers in your mind, but the existing library is about 12,700 square feet. And in this new renovated library, it has some additions, so bumps it up to a few thousand square feet more. And it also has a new city hall on the corner and a multi-purpose community space that can double as a council chamber. That's option 2. And then, of course, option 3 and 4 also leaves the city hall property to be developed at some other later date. And whether you demo it right away or you demo it much later when you feel like it, that's totally up to the city's decision. It's an option. Option 3 is flipping the different civic buildings so that the city hall now is in the renovated library, similar to option 1, and there's a new library on the corner, and the multi-purpose community building stays in the middle. That's option 3. Option 4 is, we just thought, well, it was very much for a cost comparison to see, well, what would it be like if we really redeveloped all the buildings so that the city hall, the library, and a multi-purpose council chambers were all on the library lane site in a new development. And I'll go into more detail about what that is in a minute. So those are the 4 sort of master plan ideas. And so let me focus a little bit on the very first option, which is bringing a new building to Main Street. And the new building would be a new library. This building combines 2 functions. It's not only the library, but it's also the multi-purpose community room / council chambers. And the reason why we decided to develop the multi-purpose building on this site rather than to connect it to the city hall at the renovated library building is because we felt it was a very compatible use here. It would allow the community room to be part of the library. There's some synergy developed here. It also has a nice relationship to Lyman Park, and it also would help create a more sort of robust civic presence on Main Street, since that was sort of the idea for this scheme. If you'll notice, again, I wanted to point out we are not encroaching. This scheme does not depend on encroaching into Lyman Park. However, it would be wonderful at some point as an option to be able to rethink and improve on the park without hurting any of the wonderful trees that are already there or the gazebo, but just to make it so that it was spiffed up a bit and made more of an expansion and usable outdoor space of the new library and multipurpose room. There is a small plaza here. We looked at different ideas. This is still very diagrammatic. Many things could happen here. We didn't fill the whole site so that there would be some opportunity for an outdoor plaza. The other reason why we chose this particular size for the library, this is a 2-story library, is we wanted to compare apples to the other 3 schemes so that all 4 schemes have a comparable library footprint or size, and as well as the multipurpose room, which is the same size across all 4 schemes. And this is what we're calling a massing diagram. It's one idea. It's not intended to show a lot of architectural character or materials, but it's to start to show how big the building is, if we had a gable shape which might be compatible to the other neighboring buildings, how big it feels, how tall it feels, and what its relationship might be to the multipurpose room. And in this case, we thought rather than doing one big block of a building, that we would make the multipurpose room a little more special, might put a roof garden on top so you look out onto the park, and that you had a strong presence of a front on Main Street. And again, you can see that red line is delineating about, it's hard in this bird's eye view, but kind of the rough delineation of the property line between Lyman Park and the City Hall site, which is now a library. So moving along to option 2, in more specific footprint or site plan, You can see the library has these little wings on it. The existing library is 12,700 square feet. This diagram shows additions that pop out to be little rooms to improve on the exterior character of the building, and it's about 15,250 square feet is what's represented here. The Stevenson Library has been incorporated into one of these little wings. I should have mentioned in option 1 where the existing library becomes the city hall, we've actually left the Stevenson Library where it was so that there's sort of minimal work to that site. But I didn't have a diagram of that. But in this case, and on the other two schemes, we have removed the Stevenson Library and relocated it into a different location so that it would open up the plaza for more community use. This site also, as we mentioned before, has a new city hall, and it has a new the new multipurpose room next to it. It maintains, you can see the path back to the trailhead, which was important to everyone. There are different features that can be put here, but in this particular idea, there's a plaza and also a little amphitheater associated with the library. But all of these things, again, as Mark said, are plug and play. The other thing I wanted to mention is that all of these schemes, and I should have mentioned on the first scheme, have an optional parking garage. Let me just go back one more. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention on the scheme 1. The parking garage, if we were to have one, is located under the new buildings. And in this case, the parking garage would have to be, well, it doesn't have to be, but because the site is so constricted and there's not a lot of room for ramps to go down at least 4 feet, in our minds, it made more sense to make a full garage basement so that there's a ramp that goes down to the garage, but that coming into the building at the street level and at the park level is right on grade. You don't have to go up a ramp or up any stairs. And that's the garage for that, for scheme 1. For scheme 2, and actually the next scheme also, and we mentioned it before, the potential parking garage here is in that plaza area under the multipurpose room and the city hall. And in this case, we have enough room on the site to make it a partial basement. There's an advantage to partial basement because you can still get air and light into the garage, and it's less expensive. And in this case, we have enough room to build a ramp. And here's an image of what our renovated library might look like. You can still see it's got the same curved roof. We're assuming in this roof you already have a new flat roof, like has just been discussed, but we've retained very much the bones of the existing building, but tried to update it and add some additions to it. And of course, the interior would be completely gutted and renovated. And then you can see the sort of potential shape of the building on the corner. There's a little special corner which draws people from down Adams Street, and that might be the Stevenson. Actually, the Stevenson Museum is in the library, but this might be another special room that would draw someone's eye down the street and draw you to it. I think it's also interesting. One thing I should add about the scheme, since I'm on it, is that you actually could. It really makes for sort of one of the easier quote phasing plans where you could build the city hall sort of independently of the library, whereas in the first scheme, if we're demoing the city hall, of course you have to find some place for the city hall people to go, and you must relocate people from the library. So there's a little more complexity. This one is you can build both the city hall and the library somewhat independently at different times if you choose. So option 3 is taking the reverse sort of design to the last scheme, where we're building a new library at the Adams Street corner, and we're doing the same thing we did for option 1, and we're renovating the City Hall. In this case, though, we're removing the Stevenson Museum because we are developing almost the whole parcel of this piece of the property, so that we wanted to open up the plaza to the rest of the site without the Stevenson Museum there. And again, this library is the same size as the renovated library, 15,250, same as the Main Street, and so all of these are similar sizes. And here is a little idea of what the massing of this master plan would look like. It's very similar to the other one, with gable shapes.
And Janet, just for clarification on the prior slide and also this one, because of the size of the existing library, it can accommodate the Stevenson, so it's not referenced here, but on the next slide, you do see a reference to the Stevenson going into a different portion of the library building.
I believe we've always, in option 3, they always go into the City Hall building, actually.
It's right here.
Yeah, if it's in small print, I'm sorry, but near the little peak at the back, it's the City Hall and the Stevenson Museum, because the existing library is bigger than what the offices need to be, so it fits nicely into the leftover space of the library. Option 4, as I mentioned, are all new buildings. The currently, the way this is delineated, that's a new parking lot on the left. It has more parking spaces there. The same parking garage is an option in the scheme, but it doesn't have to be. The City Hall building is about 11,000 square feet, similar to all the other schemes, or the new building scheme, and the library again is on the corner. And here, whoops, wrong way, sorry. And here is an example of what these buildings might look like. Again, some simple roof shapes. They all are buildings that are compatible with each other, shaping an outdoor plaza gathering space. Oops. Okay, so Trina's going to step in here.
Hello, very nice to be here. And I think what we're going to show you in the next few slides is not a solution, but I think there's come up a lot of questions. Gosh, what would it be like if the library became City Hall? And we're just trying to represent that a little bit. And what we're showing here is that the entry would be in essentially the same place that the library entry is. And since City Hall is sort of developed into two halves, there's sort of the city manager, city clerk, finance piece, and then there's all of the community development things. We would have essentially two counters, one going to the north, and that would be one department, and one going to the south that would hold the other piece of the program. We're showing roughly the same size of the Stevenson Museum pushed back into the main portion of the building. This is representing the condition if we were trying to open up the plaza. And then from that main lobby, you would have a hallway that would have new restrooms that would connect to the museum. It would also connect to potentially a new meeting room. We felt like the nicest space in the existing library is the area that's called the wine library. It's the pretty room where you have the windows that look out to the vineyard. And it would be nice to keep that open to the public. It could be for various commission meetings, or it could be even programmed occasionally by the public for a park and rec class or something. But it seemed like an opportunity to use the existing space. So this is just representing what it would kind of be like, and we felt like it has some potential. You know, it doesn't seem like a really difficult solution. And then this is an example of what a remodeled library might have in it. We would basically keep the same structure. I think we really think the high ceilings in the space are one of the nicest things. And given the fact that there are some issues with overloading in some of the attics, we would like to remove the one that is currently over the children's library. The one that is over the staff area now has some mechanical equipment and other infrastructure there, so we're not saying get rid of that one, but it would create more of a tall voluminous space. And we would be looking to increase the size of the children's library, connect some connection to a new meeting room that could be used for story time, and throughout the building, put in new windows, more glass, more connection to the outdoors. And if we are able to recreate the front entry of the building, have more public gathering outside the building as well. So that's just a rough example. And now we're going to show you a few images of what does a current city hall or library project look like. So here's an example of potentially a kind of lobby area from some of our projects. We're not implying any of these are exactly right for you. This is a permit counter. This happens to be in Berkeley. This is a remodel of an existing building. You can see you can remodel things and have them be fresh and clean. There are, of course, still issues with layout. Another remodel project. This was actually a lobby of a tech company, but it would be sort of a similar layout. And then this is another project. This is for Alameda County. There would be some offices, but a lot of the workspaces would be sort of open cubicle areas. Just as we're hearing, more and more people have less paper, more things are digitized. We don't need to store as much. But this is an example of a government office. And of course, there would be meeting rooms of various sizes for city meetings. This is an example of a community meeting room. This is actually at Half Moon Bay Library, but it could be in a library or in a city hall. It could kind of share the kind of uses where potentially we can have doors that open up to the outdoors more. You can have dividable rooms so that you can get multifunction out of them. And that's a goal that we would have, is to try and get as much usage as possible out of all the spaces. This is two quick views of reading rooms in public libraries. This first one is in Los Gatos of what a library can be, and you can see that it can have connections to the outdoors for nice spaces. This one is in Half Moon Bay, and it's hard to tell here, but there's actually a glass wall that's separating it from the rest of the library, so you can have some acoustical separation and have different things going on. In this case, the library is so busy that this is an actual quiet room that you go in if you want to be quiet, rather than the reverse. Children's spaces are a big deal in libraries. Children are really important users, and we love the idea that we're creating lifelong learners and readers. Middle school and teens are important. We would look for something more than what you have, which is a really kind of cramped space. And this is a quick example of a library in Santa Clara. It's a remodel of an existing older 1950s building, but you can see you can refresh things and with new furniture and finishes and lighting, you can make an older building feel attractive too. And they had, in this case, another glass door that went into a meeting room that they were able to open and separate so they could have meetings or other functions and still let it be used by everyone during the day. And then lastly, just a closing shot looking across at Los Gatos Library.
I have a little comparative matrix here, which you've seen in your package, but I'm going to skip this for a minute and come back to it, because I think it would be more helpful to talk about cost estimates first. So I just wanted to have, I'm sure many of you have done estimating already before in other projects, but I just wanted to do a little primer because it's good to go over some of these basics with our public projects. And they're all important concepts, because what we're doing now is really establishing a budget and making sure that all the pieces are identified so that you can plan ahead and you can fundraise or save your money or just obviously make sure that it's where you want it to be. So our goal with all of these estimates is to establish a budget. It's not a bid. We didn't, but it's based on our cost estimators' experience and talking to other contractors and actually looking at different benchmarking projects. But basically what we all do is we identify the construction costs as well as the soft costs, and together those become the total project cost. We're going to be focusing a lot today on construction costs, but I just wanted to make sure everyone was clear that project costs have other things besides just the construction. Construction costs include the building construction, whether it's new or renovation. It's all the things that you have to nail down, that you have to build. It doesn't fall out of the building. It includes demolition, any hazardous material removal if you have any. It includes all of the site work, which are site utilities, parking, landscaping, and any other sort of site features. It might also include something like a playground or special things like that. At this early phase of a project, we recommend a 20% design contingency, which means that our estimators estimate what they see on our drawings or in our descriptions, our narratives, and then they add 20% so that we're sure that we're covering all the things that haven't really been defined yet at this early stage. There are other construction costs that we also consider, which is escalation. Currently, we're coming out of a period where escalation has gone crazy out of the roof. I think it's gone as high as 8% a year, but now it's sort of leveling back off to more normal escalation rates, which are 5% per year. So going forward, we're assuming it'll be 5% per year compounded annually. And then there's also a premium for construction phasing if you have a very complex construction project and maybe the contractor has to remobilize 3 times. Very often there's a premium for, say, hospitals where a building is occupied. We don't think we need that right now with the projects you have, but it's just something to keep in mind going later. So just to give you an idea of what some of the soft costs are, as a rule of thumb, until we really checklist all of the soft costs that your particular projects will have, we do a 25 to 30% of the total project cost is any of these items, and there are a whole checklist. These are some of the typical ones. I just wanted to identify 3 that are always in these costs, which are design and construction fees, any other kind of fees that the city might have to it requires from other consultants. It's also furniture, fixtures, and equipment, which we call FF&E. That's always in this cost. And so when I mention if you take a building and you turn it upside down and shake out, all the things that fall out are considered FF&E. And then also it's also very prudent to include a project construction contingency, which is at a minimum of 10%. Sometimes if it's a renovation and there's a lot of, because you're opening yourselves up to a little more unknown conditions, that contingency might be recommended to go up a little, maybe 15%, maybe 20% if it's really a large project and there are a lot of unknown conditions. So that's sort of the basics for cost estimating. And so I thought I would try to tackle going through some of these estimates fairly quickly. And, I've got all 4 options up here as a way of sort of, comparing, and I'll try to remind you which option is which. But what we've done is we've taken each building, because it's possible that for many of these projects, you might be able to do one at a time, or you might be able to fund them differently. So we've itemized each one. So I'm just going to sort of compare and contrast. If you take the City Hall building, you can see option 1 and option 3 are the least expensive, and those are the renovation options. Those are the library building that's now become a City Hall, and the reason those are the same areas, and they but the main difference is that option 1, as I mentioned before, the Stevenson Museum is untouched, and most of the site is untouched. So the main difference in cost here is really there's additional site work in the renovation scheme for option 3, and that accounts for that. And so many of these things are still variable, but for what our estimator was estimating, these are the things that some of the assumptions we made. So I'd say option 1 is sort of the rock bottom cost for the City Hall, which is $8.5 million. And these, by the way, just to remind you, these are all construction costs. They don't have the later you want to consider adding the soft costs and the escalation. these are all costs in today's dollars. Our estimate was done in about September 2019, just a few months ago. For the City Hall, continuing on, option 2 and 4 are the new buildings. Option 2 is a little more expensive because it's the option that's on the corner, so there's a little more embellishment of the corner to draw people towards the City Hall, but it's mainly different because that particular scheme is assuming that there would be a parking garage under the City Hall. So there's a suspended structural slab, so that adds almost $1 million to that scheme, whereas option 4, it's as if there was, assuming there would be no parking garage under that building. But you could still always add it, but then you'd have to add the suspended slab. For the library building, number 2, that is on its own because it's the library and the multipurpose room on the same site at $24 million together. We treated that almost as one building. So that for 3 and 4, library and multipurpose room, if you add those two numbers together, it is more comparable to option 1, although option 3 and 4 each, for the option 2, 3, and 4, have more site work affiliated with them than option 2. But if you take option 3, a library only, you can see that the least expensive scheme is the renovation scheme, which is option 2, although it's completely renovated and has some about 3,500 square feet of addition. And then option 3 and 4 are essentially the same. I think 16 million is actually 16.2 million. And the only difference between the two is that there's a little more site cost associated with option 4, but they're essentially the same. And then the multipurpose room and the park and rec facility, you can see those are the same costs all across the board. Now, those are the sort of basic costs for each building. We could always, and in all of those costs, there is we have to meet what's called Cal Green and Title 24 for energy. And so all of those schemes are pretty high level energy standards relative to anything that was built, say, 10 years ago. But many municipalities and owners are going even higher than our code. And they're going towards, say, a net zero building, which means you have net zero water usage. Whatever you use, you put back. Whatever energy you use, you regenerate it. So there are additional features that you could add to these costs, and we have an allowance of about 10% of construction costs to account for those if you choose. So it might include photovoltaics, solar collectors on the roof. It might include water reuse, maybe a retention tank so you could use that water for irrigation. Maybe you want to upgrade some of your other sustainable features, maybe a more specialized HVAC system. So you're doing other things that make for a more passive building. So there are many things you can do to arrive at more of a net zero level or a LEED, gold, and platinum. We feel with the costs that are there now, you're probably arriving at something like a LEED silver. That's been our experience so far. And the underground parking garage is something that we've itemized. We haven't added them to any of these costs. Doing an underground parking garage, it's a daunting exercise, but there are parking we know issues in your town. People are worried about parking and traffic, but maybe there are other solutions. But this is definitely something you could consider. But it is digging down into the ground, and we're finding that for a fully underground parking garage, it's about $100,000 a parking spot, and for a semi-underground parking garage, only 4 feet, maybe it's $50,000 a parking spot. And so these are the two. The range of costs, $4 million to $4.6 million. 4.6 being for the City Hall site or the library with the on Main Street, and the $4 million option would be for the other three options. And then we also added as an option, or just hopefully maybe it's another phased item, which is providing some improvement to Lyman Park that would just make it more usable. It's beautiful as it is now, but make it even better so it's more connected to the new building. So these are just some benchmark examples because everyone says, well, they fall through the roof when we start looking at some of the unit costs. And I remember when things used to be $250 a square foot, but that's really not the case anymore. We put together this list, right? And we put them in a way that maybe many people sort of think about buildings, which is per square foot cost, which isn't always the one way to do it, but it is sort of a marker. So I'm hoping that maybe this will be helpful. The first project is the Los Altos Community Center. And this is our project, so we know it very well. It just bid in just less than 4 months ago. It's 24,500 square feet at about $20.3 million. That's just for the building. And that arrives at about $830 a square foot. The next few buildings are not our buildings, but we checked with our cost estimator who did estimate these buildings. They had some records from other sources. But there's the new Atherton City Hall and Police Station, also bid this year. And its unit cost is about $800 a square foot, and that includes police, and police often is very intensive infrastructure. It has an associated library with many, I understand, sustainable features, so maybe it's a little more than silver. Also bid at the same time as a smaller building, almost 10,000 square feet, and it's running at almost $1,200 a square foot. There's a new building that's under construction now. It was bid in 2018. It's the East Palo Alto Youth Center, 25,000 square foot building, and it's about $840 a square foot. The new Fremont City Hall, smaller building, more in line with some of the sizes of our buildings here, almost 14,000 square feet, and that's running over $900 a square foot. The next two are buildings with it's a community center in Burlingame with a underground parking garage, which is why we put it on here. That will be bid. It's not bid yet, but it's still we think it'll be bid in the first quarter of this coming year. It's a larger building, 35,000 square feet, and it's running about $700 a square foot. You can see the larger the building is, the square footage goes down because there is an economy of scale. This is a parking garage that only has 41 spaces. I don't know why it's so expensive, but it's $200 a parking spot. The next project is our project. It's the Capitola Library. It's still under construction. It was bid early this year. It's about not too different from the size of our buildings here. Again, about 11,700 square feet, and that bid at around $12 million just for the building. That's about $1,000 a square foot. Libraries are a little more expensive because you have all the bookshelves and things like that, and more sort of AV stuff. And the last two projects are renovation projects. And the Mission Branch Library in Santa Clara is something that we completed just last year, but it was bid in 2017, and that came in at about $550 a square foot. It didn't have a lot of exterior renovation. It was primarily interior and some systems upgrades. And then the last project is in Healdsburg. It's not our project, but we did a little bit of research just because I think it is of interest. It's down the road. The new Healdsburg remodel, it does have an addition also, bid in 2016. And so if you escalate its, what we understand its bid price, it becomes about $400 a square foot. So if you compare it to the estimates we have, our new building construction is in the range, our four options between $900 a square foot and $1,150 a square foot. The renovation of our library would be somewhere between $600 to $625 a square foot. There's quite a bit of that. Would also, the higher is if there's a little more addition. We actually have given our estimator the assumption that there's a fair amount of new envelope, would be new windows, new doors, just a fair amount of demolition. And then, of course, we talked about the parking garage already. So if I go back to our pros and cons, and I think maybe it's pretty hard to read, I'm sorry, but maybe I'll just sort of explain a little bit. I think the first half of that matrix is really about the cost estimates, and I went over many of those things already, but I think the one thing I want to point out about what we learned from here is those are 4 options, 1, 2, 3, 4 across the top. I'm sorry if you can't see it. And the big bar at the bottom of all the little boxes is the total. If you were to say, okay, well, this just another sort of marker. What if you added up all of the pieces, all of the buildings and the site work, but not including a parking garage? How do they compare? Now, one thing, in order to when we put this together, it seemed like maybe it was more equitable. We added the cost of the Lyman Park improvements to these costs, but maybe we could also take it out. So if I just read across, I'll read it because I know many can't see it. For option 1, the overall construction cost is about, oh God, I can't even see it, 41.7 million, and that includes $2 million for the Lyman Park improvement. Option 2 is also 41.7 million, surprisingly. Option 3 is 42.2 million. Option 4, with all new buildings, is 45.3 million. So that's the most expensive one, and the other 3 are actually very close. If you take out the Lyman Park improvements, but it's still because it's a much smaller site that you're improving, it's about maybe it'd be more like 39 million. But I guess my point here is that the cost of these options are all getting to be pretty similar. So I think it's important to decide what works best for you in your community. Obviously, I don't want to play down the fact that you have to raise a lot of money still. It still costs something. But if all things are getting close to equal, then you want to be sure that then it allows you to think, well, which of these projects is really going to satisfy the goals of my community. So the other items, maybe I'll just try to quickly go through. Number 4, parking. Again, parking garages is an option for all of them. Option 1, parking has 48 spots. That's that we're accomplishing. Option 2, we're getting 107 spots. Option 3 is the same, 107. Option 4, we're getting more, 155. They all still fall short of what is currently your planning commission's guidelines, but it is a negotiable item, and so that's something that we would address once you decide which scheme you prefer. I think the synergy, the last item on here, I think, which we thought was important because we've added the option 1, is its relationship to downtown, and I think the pro for option 1 is it does add potential revitalization of Main Street. That's the hope. Option 2, 3, and 4 are all walkable to Main Street. They still can potentially draw from Main Street with, say, a new Stevenson Museum or a new special building on the corner. So it would impact the downtown in a different way. In terms of synergy, which is the one item we had on here, it seems that option 1 obviously would contribute. The whole goal is to contribute to the downtown synergy, whereas option 2, 3, and 4 are really trying to maximize the buildings together and creating their own sort of community synergy. And then I just want to go to the very last slide, which is really next steps. We think that as you've had your meeting, I guess just earlier this week or last Monday, to really establish, we understand, a site selection criteria together with the decision-making process and, again, overall priorities. And that by early 2020, that you would select a project or projects with associated site development that will move forward into design and construction. And so to help you understand a little bit about what an overall kind of schedule or sequence of events might look like once you do make that decision of, okay, which site, which buildings. This is a pretty typical outline or diagram of the steps that follow next. The first 3 little squares or whatever they are, shapes, are really the design phase. It goes from schematic design and any kind of environmental entitlements, like a CEQA that you might have to go through design development, that yellow box, through construction documents and permitting. And that whole period of time is roughly, it's about 13 months. A year if you're fast, and permitting is happening in that same period of time. The little red dots are really, we still continue to cost estimate at each milestone to be sure we're on budget. And then the blue box is starting construction. That so after you get your permits, and then you're ready to go out to bid and award. We've allowed 3 months for that. And the construction, given the size of the projects they are now, but smaller ones might be 12 to 15 months. If it's 12 months, it is very straightforward, but 15 is what we're finding is pretty comfortable, to 18 months if it's more complicated and there's more demolition, there's more, there's maybe you have the parking garage. I mean, that's a longer construction period, and then you can occupy the building. So as a hypothetical example, say we decide to, you decide by April, then if you were to start it, say, okay, go forward, start the design in April, you would be able to start construction in August of 2021. So what is that? That is 13 plus another 4. So it's almost 16 months later you would be able to start construction. So that might be August of 2021, and then you would be able to, if you were to go for 15 months, you could be pretty close to moving in November 2022, or 18 months, February of the next year, 2023. I think the point with this image is to emphasize these things do take a while. Any point along the way, you might be able to accelerate, or it might take longer. If, for example, there's if there's some projects where we have red-legged frogs or things like that, you have to be sure that you're meeting all of your CEQA requirements. Permitting depends on your permitting staff and how that's done and how quickly we can get it done. Sometimes, if they're not very in project, can get done, really fast. So these are sort of allowances for the time frame. I think the thing that's important to, again, remember is time is money, and so the longer all of these things take, or the longer it takes to decide, then escalation starts kicking in. And as I mentioned, escalation is moving at, I think we can expect it to move at 5% compounded every year. So I think that's our presentation.
Thank you very much, and we really appreciate the work. I'm going to open it to public comment in a moment. I'm going to bring it to the council first, if there's any initial comment or question.
Thank you guys for a comprehensive report. Appreciate it. Super.
Any initial comment?
No, just thank you.
Okay.
I'm just wondering what the schedule is for other people who've come for other items. Do you have a sense of how long you anticipate that this will go, depending on public comment?
Yeah, this is...
Others are waiting around.
Right.
I think it's fair to them to let them know.
Okay. So we're going to take public comment. Can I see a show of hands of how many folks are planning public comment?
Angela, yeah.
Okay. What is your thought? Is your thought to move? Okay.
Just getting a sense
of where we are. Okay. Okay. So with no, Mary, please.
I just have one question for you, Janet, about remodeling versus new construction. Is there a difference when you get into substantial remodel of a building in terms of what kind of warranties you're actually getting on the work, as opposed to brand new, where you might have contractor warranties? And is that something we should worry about, or is it pretty much the same?
Well, whatever the contractor touches, and then he is under warranty for most of that work. Obviously, if you have a new roof, the roof is clearly warranted. Anything that's new, you have new casework and it starts to get dinged up over, or it falls apart, then that someone has to come back and fix it. I think if you have a new building, it's more clear. I think if you have a renovation, sometimes a contractor might say, well, that was already there. It wasn't my fault. I inherited that. So we actually want to be pretty careful in the beginning to document what the contractor is responsible for. But generally, if it's a remodel, they're responsible for all the new work that they do. If there's something they didn't touch, obviously they aren't responsible for that.
Thank you.
I had one more question. My question is about parking. Do we have to do the parking? I'm not clear. Do we have to do these parking garages or not?
I think we have to negotiate the parking requirement or the parkings that will be required by each site, given what you would require from anybody who walked in the door at the building department. But it is also in most municipalities, and I would assume it'd be here too, if you propose a parking strategy that, okay, at peak times I can borrow this parking lot or that often can be accepted, but it really seems to be in your community as well a negotiable item, and we understood that the last word is really city council. So it's finding a balance that you feel comfortable with making sure that there is adequate parking when you need it and how we're doing that. And yet at the same time, having a strategy for unusual times that you wouldn't have to have that peak load all the time, and you're also assuming maybe there's not simultaneous use for all these functions. And so you create a plan. It is, I think we would discuss it.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Anna, I think I recall when we were here last time, we had some of the schemes that had that buffer zone where we showed a whole lot more parking, and we heard from City Council that was just emotionally not the way you'd like to see the land used. And so we went towards a direction where we were trying to be more efficient with the land by proposing the parking structures. We think there is a parking demand, that these buildings, if they're popular, are going to draw people and they'll need to park somewhere. So you'll have to figure out what that right balance is.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other initial council comments? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to open it to the public comment now. We're not going to be voting on anything tonight, so it's important for people to speak. We have a 4-minute limit. If you don't get everything in that 4 minutes, send us an email to complete your thoughts. But we'll be sticking to the 4-minute limit and with one comment from each person. Thank you.
Thank you. I think this might just take me a minute. I'm going to read from this so I don't forget anything. As some of you may already know, the St. Helena Historical Society has successfully negotiated and signed a 3-year lease for the use of 5 rooms, equaling approximately 5,000 square feet at the former St. Helena Catholic School. We will have an option to renew our lease if necessary, and we are very excited to have this transitional home for the St. Helena Heritage Center. I can't tell you how happy I am, although we love the library. With the move, our lease space, we can at least begin to illuminate St. Helena's rich diversity of heritage through our exhibits, educational programs, signature events, research services, oral history program, and publications. We can finally tell the stories that expose the impact of values held by our predecessors and inform the decisions we make today about our future. We understand that the City Council's first priority is to focus its energy and time towards solving the issues of City Hall and our library. However, we need your support to keep us in the big picture of bringing a heritage center for St. Helena to the Adams Street property. We're not expecting to build our permanent heritage center for several years, but in order to start our capital campaign and raise the money, We need to be able to tell potential donors that there will be a location for us next to the library. That location is critical because it is extremely important to us to be able to continue the supportive relationship that we share with the library. Please keep us in your plans as you consider the future of Adams Street. We can be of great benefit to the future of St. Helena as we all strive to bring vitality to our town. With your support, we will be able to stimulate the imaginations of children and adults about what greatness can come from humble beginnings, adventurous spirit, and partnership with the land. Thank you for your hard work and for all of our community's hard work that this is going to take. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Helen Garangelli Nelson. I live at 1326 Sylvaner. Been there for 50 years. Built in 1969. Been in the area since 45 when my parents bought Etna Springs Resort and I was 3 years old. I've been in this community, active in the community, all my life, really. Taught here for a long time. I feel the Adams Street property recommendations and changing ideas have been going on for too long. It's been so frustrating for those of us on the Historical Society board and members to have to come to these meetings here, we're there, we're not here, we're not there. And it's been very, very difficult. We've had a very active board. We're very active in the community, very supportive. And as Suzanne says, we want to keep this heritage going. You have no spot for us on any of these plans, and it's very discouraging. The property was bought for the citizens of St. Helena, the Adams Street property, to enjoy, not make money for the city. The library is fine where it is. The library people all say this. They have enough space. With some fixing up, they'll be perfect. The city needs a heritage center on this property. The Historical Society has been told by many city councils that we have a spot there and then it's gone. As I said, it's very frustrating for us. And to hear the council and some communities say we need to sell the property, the city needs the money. There are other ways to get the money for what you need to do. We ask you to please reconsider your priorities, put us back on the master plan. The majority of citizens of St. Helena want a heritage center, not another hotel. If we could have an option 5, that would be super. Thank you.
Thank you. My understanding is all options are still on the table. That's my understanding.
You okay, Cindy? I'm Anthony McKelly, 1125 Cornella. I'm only here tonight to try to save the city money and to build something for the city that will not cost the city a dime. I've been a contractor 40 years. With Larry Vermeulen, we did the first renovation of the Carnegie Building. I've done the Oddfellows Building. I've been in the high school buildings. I've done a lot of construction, so I do know costs. Unfortunately, the best option for the city is not on the table tonight. And that is put City Hall back where it is, build a 2-story structure, move it next to Lyman Park, so you can put glass on the south side so you feel like you're in the park, and put the recreation department on the bottom. If you move it, you can create all kinds of parking around the City Hall. And it only costs you between, I estimate, about $15 to $16 million. not the 67, whatever all those numbers light up. On Adams Street, though, let us nonprofits build something for the city. Number one is the Historical Society that these ladies have talked about. They will pay all the costs for that, maintain it. The amphitheater group, which I'm part of, Craig Bond is part of, because he has a nonprofit that we can build it through that money, we'll build that bathroom for the city, a real bathroom, for under $200,000, and we'll also do the park. All we ask the city to do is please maintain the bathroom, but we'll maintain the building, and we'll maintain the park, but please empty the trash, and we're going to put eco-friendly playground and equipment there that I've have a place other than the north side of the building to do any events. That's a 250 seat amphitheater with a canvas cover over, because Jerry Hart, our acoustical engineer, says canvas will absorb sound where hard surfaces bounce sound. That parking area is for all the people that come to St. Helena. And the city has $539,000 in your parking fund to build that. It also can be used for the farmers market. The farmers market, Ed Smith is here tonight, and hopefully he'll address that. My father, 70 years ago, got the city to buy Crane Park for Little League. He was the first president of Little League, was a president for 12 years. We want to do the same thing. Give the Historical Society and its amphitheater group 3 years to raise the money, get a plan to the city, and then let us build it and lease it to us for $1 a year for 50 years with a 50-year renewal. And then on that, you see the parking or the trail to the river is still intact. We have not taken it up where the city plans have demolished that trail in the first part. And if you see at the end of the trail there, at the end of the project, on the right side, there's a half acre there. I'm trying to coax Nimbus Art to go there. But Nimbus Art wouldn't build a parking lot. They would have to buy spaces in that parking area at $7,000 a space, like the city charges all other buildings, because I don't want any more parking lots out there. And you can see I've tried to preserve all that vineyard, because you got to keep enough open space so somebody will farm it for free for the city, so the city will have no maintenance here, nothing to take care of, and it'll be just something for this community. And I have no interest in it, either just to do it, but I'd appreciate it. This is my fourth time trying to put this plan forward. If the city doesn't want to do this, please indicate that tonight, because now that I'm retired, I have lots of friends that want me to do things for them, and I have my own stuff to do. And I'm not going to keep coming back, beating my head for 20 years, which is how long this property's been bought for the community. And I just need some type of direction, and so does the Historical Society. It's not fair for them, and they want to, and all of this will be basically free to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment? And we can queue up here with the public comment to keep things moving along if there's additional comment.
Hi, I'm Ed Smith. I'm been involved with the farmers market for about 25 years, and this what Anthony was talking about, we would sure love to come back downtown. I think it would bring a lot of the community downtown. It would be good for the downtown area, good foot traffic, and if he can do it for what he's talking about, the money situation, I think it's a good deal for the town. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's Tom Faraday. I used to be an architect in town, but I'm retired. And I wanted to talk about option 5 also. In rough numbers, building all these new buildings is about $40 million. If you don't touch the library except to repair it, and you build a new city hall on the present city hall site for $20 million, you'd probably save about half that $40 million. I don't understand why that option hasn't been explored. Perhaps it has and I missed it, but it seems to make a lot of common sense to leave City Hall downtown, right in the middle of town, and leave the library alone. Everybody loves the library where it is and loves the way it is. Just ask the people that use it and staff it. There's no reason to replace it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there an additional comment?
Phil Murphy. I just want to agree with what has just been said. I think we should spend our money fixing up City Hall on Main Street. We don't need a new library. If you do talk to the people that work there, and I have talked to the people that work there, and I've talked to the people that volunteered there, the library, they love the library. They just need some repairs. They don't need a new library. So if we just put City Hall where City Hall is, take the one that's there down, build a new one, fix up the library, I think you're going to be a lot better off spending the money that you don't have doing that rather than spending the money that you don't have building this monstrosity that's here. We should look around and talk to people and find out what they really want, and that's what they really want. They don't want that property destroyed. They don't want a new library. They just want, I know you need a new city hall, so build a new city hall. Let's build it. Let's repair what we need to repair. Let's paint the fire department. Those are things that we need to do. We don't need to do all of this. It's just overkill. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want you to consider the 800 individuals and businesses that contributed to build the library in the beginning. In the 70s. There's tremendous community buy-in for it. The whole community was for it. And I think you don't have the whole community for some of these projects that you're looking at. And maybe that's where you need to start is what does the community support? Thanks.
Thank you. Is there additional public comment?
Hi there. Peter Scott. St. Helena. First, I want to thank the council for keeping this process moving forward, and I have to keep reminding myself this is early. I mean, we're forward in this process, but this is, as the mayor reminded us, not an end all. None of these things may end up coming true. I don't know. We're still early in the early stages. I did have a basic comment that if I could ask Nolan Tam or the city. Are the illustrations you worked on using the entire 5.6 acres or just half of that, right? A little less than half, okay. Okay, and I'm assuming that was at the city's directive. I don't know that. I didn't see the directive. And speaking of the directive, there are a couple of comments I want to make towards the design elements. Everything that you put on that property to me, blocks and ruins, to some degree, the greatest part of that property, which is the vista to the east. All the buildings there don't maximize the natural inherent assets of that land. But the greater thing is the whole idea of taking this gem of a property, this asset, our greatest asset, that many will say, and putting administrative offices there. That doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense that we would put an office building on that land. I agree with working with our present structure, but that gets back to the directive for the development to the consultants. To me, when I look at St. Helena, I think we're really blessed and fortunate that we have this tremendous potential of people coming here to spend money. And they just don't happen to do it in our town. And part of that's our fault. We don't give people a reason to come to St. Helena. They have a reason to come to Napa Valley. And again, we're fortunate that we have these somewhat wealthy tourists who want to come here and spend their money in lodging, food, et cetera. That's not the kind of tourism you might get with T-shirts and refrigerator magnets. And we're not the kind of agricultural community that's impoverished. I mean, we've got two dynamic economic drivers. And we don't seem to be able to capture that as a city because there's no reason to come to St. Helena. And I know that's difficult to hear. We have character, we have history, but there isn't a reason someone's going to plan a vacation here because they want to see something we have to offer. And I think this property provides us with an opportunity to fulfill that wish. And use that property as a venue to drive economic stability and vibrancy on Main Street. so that people will come here, then they will go to our restaurants, then they will go to our shops. Right now, we don't have that. So my vision for that property is a little different. There's probably no visions that haven't been thought of for that property. Everybody has a different one. But I see it more as a destination venue, more as a property that can be used and utilized and enjoyed by the public, and an enticement for visitors. And it wouldn't involve a city hall there. I don't think people are going to go to that property to see our city hall. So I see more open space, more green space, more theater, entertainment, amphitheater, and other uses that are private, public, and benefit both the city, the citizens, and our visitors. So I have plans, but I'm not going to share those now. It's probably not the appropriate time, but I do want to say thank you for driving the process forward.
Thank you. Additional comments, please.
Tom Belt, 1520 Hillview. And I wanted to say in the beginning, I admire everyone's ability
Tom, can you lift up the microphone a little bit?
to articulate their feelings so strongly. I don't have that gift, so I've kind of come prepared tonight to read something that I feel very strongly about. And I personally have attended several of these past developing civic improvements in our city, and I've become aware that there was a 14-member steering committee selected to provide community input to the City Council in its effort to make a decision about the best course of action regarding the civic improvement options. During these City Council meetings, I have heard both city staff and City Council members referring to and placing import on the input received from this steering committee. This prompted me to ask questions to one of our council members about how this steering committee was selected. I asked, did the city publicize its interest in forming this steering committee prior to making its selection process? And if so, how was it advertised? Was there an application process employed to help determine the potential steering committee's members and qualifications? What criteria was used to select the steering committee members? And were the meetings held by the steering committee open to the public? I went ahead and, as I said, I sent this question to one of the council members, and I received an answer the next day saying that basically the council member knew nothing about this steering committee. This prompted me to search the internet to learn the identity of the steering committee members, which I ultimately found. And based upon the composition of the steering committee, it became obvious to me that a few of the committee members had a pre-bias favoring a new hotel development on Adams Street and selecting Library Lane as the location for our new city hall. In conclusion, members who took part in this process, absolutely nothing. And personally, I am completely undecided about which of the options facing the City Council is the best decision. But once City Council makes its decision about financing options and a site location, I strongly recommend that the city place this matter as a future ballot choice to ensure it's something most of our community supports. I think it's obvious from all the meetings that we've had about this that the majority of the people that have taken the time to come forward and express their opinion on this don't want to have a hotel. They don't want to have all this placed on the Library Lane. And as has been said earlier, they would like to have the City Hall placed where City Hall is currently. And it makes the most sense to me from a financial standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional comment?
Jack Stewart, 22 Crane Avenue, St. Helena. I guess I'm one of those biased steering committee members. I was asked to join the steering committee because at the time I was chair of the Friends and Foundation of the Library, of the St. Helena Public Library, and I agreed to join with a diverse group of people who were interested in the community, young people, from different backgrounds, people with different ideas. We were lucky enough to participate in the evaluating the RFPs back in March and April, and we, along with the city staff, asked Noel and Tam to take on the task for this first stage. And my remarks tonight, though, are only my remarks. Not, I don't represent the Friends of the Library tonight. But I just wanted to make a few points. These plans that we've seen, yes, admittedly the costs are breathtaking, and that's something to get used to, and we'll have opportunities to deal with that and perhaps reduce, if we go forward with these projects, reduce the cost by eliminating elements. However, it seems that with all of the very worthy causes that are asking for space in city buildings and outdoor areas, there must be a way for everyone to get together on this and work together to keep this project going. We've been talking and arguing and fighting about Adams Street at least 30 years, 3 decades. And it's time for the council to lead the community and move us forward, yes, with continuing input from the community, but also taking leadership and working with consultants, these very qualified consultants, to do the right thing for the next several decades in this town. The reason that everything seems so expensive is that the city has not accomplished anything really on this property for as long as it's owned it, and even the 10 years before, when they were trying to keep Safeway from building a big store on that property, no one could ever come to an agreement. So people have to put their heads together and think, well, how can I work with Tom Belt to get something going? How can I work with the Historical Society, or how can the Hysterical Society, not hysterical, sorry. That was a misstatement. How can we all work with each other? We're not all going to get what we want. We can get something. We can get something important for each of our causes. And there's no decision tonight about where everything or anything will go. But it's important to keep this going. We've stalled on this project for so many times. We used to think of this will be for our grandparents, our grandchildren rather, and I think a couple of generations have already passed and moved out of town. They won't be able to take advantage of it. And people have suggested there was no input on these first phases. There was input, community input, a very successful survey was done, and I'll write you the rest of it in a letter. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Any additional comment?
Hi, everybody. Caldwell and Crane. Wow, this is quite an evening here. Those are big numbers, yes. This is just, I have a couple questions, and that is, my concern is about Adams in general, the whole property versus half the property, because options 2 and 3, 4 preclude that you're going to take up half the property and leave the other half open for something, maybe development, maybe just a dog walk, or whatever. I would feel so much more comfortable as a citizen paying taxes, and especially now paying more taxes because they changed the tax rules in Washington, so I don't get all the write-offs anymore. So I'm being hammered more with taxes, and I get a little bit worried about $70 million projects that could work their way back into my pocket, and I get a little nervous. I prefer plans where we can figure out ways for other people to pay it, maybe like visitors, not locals. So what I would love, and I'm not sure if this is possible, if we could like get some estimates from hotel brokers, maybe like CB Richard Ellis or Marcus and Millichaps or Colliers, to say, what is all of Adams worth today as a resort over a 30-year horizon? How much money would he bring in versus only half of it and the back half? Because I think going forward, when you're dealing with such big numbers, we need to see what are the other options as far as how we're going to finance all this stuff, because these aren't all the only things on the ticket that we got to deal with. We got to deal with an old pension plan we got to pay for. We got the city sidewalks that people are tripping over. We got to pay for that and upgrade that. From what I understand, just the sidewalk plan from Gates and Company is $10 to $15 million alone. So there's a lot more bills in the works out there that we got to deal with coming up, and I sure would feel better by, instead of just looking at this from today's point of view, as far as what the numbers are, to really see this stretched out over 30 years, because we were talking about buildings that are going to be lasting 30 to 40 years. I don't think I'm going to be here in that time, but it's kind of nice to know that we're going to be responsible going forward as stewards of our own economy here, that we're doing the right thing. Because a lot of questions have not been answered as far as options 2 and 3 and 4, which is what happens to the city hall site if we go ahead and build all this on the Adams property? What happens to that land? Because I think pretty much we'll have the stuffing taken out of us trying to build that on Adams, that Civic Center. So there'll be probably this propensity to go ahead and sell that city hall lot to somebody, which means the way that property line is skewed with Lyman Park would probably be pretty marginalized with the building going down the side. So I'd like to kind of know going forward with this whole discussion, what happens to the City Hall site with options 2, 3, and 4? And can we get some real numbers as far as what Adams is really worth to this town for the next 30 years? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any additional comment? Seeing none, I will close the public comment. I will bring it up to the council. Is there any initial comment or question from the council at this point? Any thoughts?
What do you want from us?
I think where we're at tonight, Mr. Prestwich, if you can sort of take us to let us know where we are.
Looking for, if you have questions for Noel and Tam regarding any of the concepts that were presented tonight, or questions about the cost estimates. This is the opportunity to follow up on those questions.
So what we're doing tonight is we're receiving and filing the information. We're not making any decisions. This is part of a longer process where we're factoring everything in. So if there are questions of Noel and Tam, this is the time to.
I thought it was comprehensive, and I want to thank you again. I think we as a community should digest it, and fortunately, by doing something like that, it helps expose some of the questions that many of the folks in the audience have asked. And so I think that's incredibly effective. So, good job.
Comments?
Well, at some point here, I thought we were also going to talk about what our next steps were going to be. And perhaps we can talk about that a little bit tonight. At our last meeting, we talked about receiving this report and focusing on financing, perhaps with a committee that we would select, and maybe we should, talk about that, who might be on it, when this would happen, see how it would fold into this projected timeline of being able to come to some decision by April. So I think we should talk about that. I have some ideas about it. I think it's...
I'm sorry, for a point of order.
What?
It's not agendized to discuss
it is.
Is it?
Regard optimal timing and focus of next steps is the
Okay.
recommended action.
Sorry, I thought it was a file and receive. Okay.
Okay.
You know, this is a work effort that has been going on for, how long have you been here, Mark? 2 years? You know, it started with the SHAPE committee, and it is a bit frustrating to not acknowledge all of the work that has come before that led to this, where we are tonight. There has been a lot of citizen input, a lot of work by that committee, and they formulated a lot of options. And one of them was build the city hall where it is, another one was build a new one on Adams, and another one was move it into the renovated library or move it into some other renovated building. And so what I feel we are doing is following up on that and trying to build on it. And there was a lot of citizen engagement during the SHAPE process. And I don't think we can forget it. And I think we have to look at how the decisions we make are interrelated. I mean, Anthony brought up the downtown market study. And I think one of the things that led us to looking at the City Hall option on the Library Lane was to do something for the downtown. We as a council decided that over a year ago at a big public meeting when we received the SHAPE report, that we should at least look at whether something could happen on the City Hall property that would be more than an office building, that would not be closed at night, that would not be closed all weekend, that might be able to do something that helped the downtown. And so this idea to put the City Hall somewhere else didn't come out of nowhere. It also came out of a lot of work that people have done. And I think we have to keep building on that and not just throw it away, or we will make no decision for another 10 years. And one thing that comes through loud and clear from these numbers is that the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. And I go back to the SHAPE committee, and one of their guiding principles was minimize the time it takes to get it done and to build buildings that people can take pride in and places that are good places for our employees to work and that are safe. And I continue to believe that that is the direction we are going in. And of course we have to continue to have citizen involvement. And I think at some point we have to have a survey when we have some real information we can give people about what the various options are and what they're going to cost and how we think we're going to finance them. But I do not favor, if you're going to ask me, that we just rebuild the City Hall on the City Hall side. I think if we just decide to do that, we have thrown out all of the good work and all of the possibilities that might flow from doing part or all of this plan. I think we have to keep at it. I also think when you talk about building on other work, we have a active transportation committee that's been very busy creating climate action directives. And I don't think we just throw that work out either. I mean, a lot of what they're talking about is we should be doing these deep green options for city facilities. We should be doing net zero energy requirements. We should not be so worried about parking. We should try to maximize bicycle and pedestrian trips, and we should try to minimize personal vehicle usage. And they have recommendations, regarding energy efficient landscaping. So I think part of the question is how much are we going to pay attention to their recommendations, or are we going to just throw them out and say thank you for all the work, but we're not going to consider that. So I think we have to keep moving forward, and I think we have to try to move forward together, as difficult as it is. But this cannot be a black versus white decision. We have to find a compromise. That's what government is all about, in my view. And I'm sure there's a reasonable compromise here, and we have to just keep at it.
Thank you.
That sounds great. So how do we do that? What's the next step to do that?
So I'm anticipating bringing back, probably in a special meeting, the options for process related to the task forces that I mentioned earlier that you discussed on Monday of last week. So we've only had 4 working days in the office since that meeting and haven't put that report together or scheduled that date yet, but I'm anticipating that we'll be putting something together over the coming weeks where we will bring back options for a process related to how you assemble the task forces really, because I think I'm anticipating that you'll have multiple groups, but this is a policy choice for you in terms of how you proceed with those citizen-focused groups. And we will present you options that you can select from and a recommended process for perhaps a couple-week application period, you receiving those applications, choosing via a couple of options in terms of process who is selected for what, and then some concepts for a timeline on what amount of time do you expect the group to do the work. What I also heard on Monday was an expectation of the city council that while the group may be able to work independently of meetings and formal Brown Act meetings, an expectation that there would be some form of public engagement and process related to soliciting community feedback, sharing some of the concepts, considering those issues, and then eventually providing the council with recommendations and thinking on the task that they were presented with. So I think the hope in my mind is that we can set them in motion before the holidays, and that perhaps coming back in early 2020 in the January, February timeframe, that there would be public engagement, thinking will have been done, and maybe by the February timeframe, using general timeframes, information presented to the City Council for you to chew on in terms of site selection, funding strategies, other feedback.
Mr. Knudsen, any thoughts? Mr. Doring?
I want to apologize for interrupting council member because I had misread what was on the what was the agenda for that. I thought it was a file and report, so I appreciate her bringing up the elements of what our next steps are, and I'm fully supportive of whatever the council decides.
Thank you. Mr. Doring?
Just I want to comment on the notion of having more than one task force. I think I know the community pretty well, and I think that may lead us down a dead end, frankly, to have potential turf wars and miscommunication and difficulty with various task forces doing things that may be overlap with other task force. I do believe that we need to have a broad-based task force with a variety of interests like financial and real estate development and construction, and folks who represent sort of the community interest, whatever those interests are, a large enough task force. But I hesitate to have more than one task force because I just think that's going to be difficult to manage, just that bureaucracy. So I would like to hear you out more on that, but my initial inclination is that's going to be fraught with a lot of problems, unintended consequences. The only other observation, as I said in our last meeting, I really don't have any dog in this race. They're all interesting options to look at. The hardest thing is trying to bring the community together. That question's been raised several times, and there's really no easy way to do that other than to listen to people and have people feel like they've been heard and that there's a transparent process for that. I do think, just there is some good old-fashioned sense to try to make as many people happy as possible, just, to the extent you can. Sometimes you just can't do that. And this community has all kinds of different interests, but I think we need to improve these civic assets. We need to figure out how to pay for them. We need to move forward. We do need to lead. It's often difficult to lead when you have a divided community. The potential to put something like this on a ballot, to have a question like this is intriguing to me. I don't know how would we do that, if it would be binding or non-binding, but something I would be interested in looking at as we have a couple of elections coming up. So those are just my comments. I really do hope and pray that we can come together and try to sort of learn to work with one another and try to step into the shoes of the other, try to get something done for the community, because our time is here. It's running. We don't have that much time on this earth, frankly. Our time is here.
With Councilmember Doring about that danger with too many of the committees. I mean, we saw it here tonight with the steering committee. I was on that, and I didn't feel that bias that you mentioned as a part of that process. I felt what was so exciting about that process was that people were excited and happy to contribute and looking at all of the issues and what could we do and come together on that land. Thinking what would happen in the development of Adams, that could be later. This right now was focusing on how do we get our needs met that we need to now. And so if it's too much of a divisive issue that we're not going to trust any of the community members that get on those committees, why do them? Other than I know that we need to at least have one for the financial one. But that's my only other comment.
Ms. Coverstein, did you have another comment?
I just got an email here, so I feel I have to comment because someone sent me an email saying I twisted what the SHAPE committee did. I will try to make it clear. The SHAPE committee was asked to present several options for each of the facilities. One of them was, and they voted on them, and some received more votes than others, but there was an option to rebuild the city hall on the city hall site. There was another consideration to putting it in a remodeled library, and there was another consideration, I think it got a vote or two, to build it on the Adams site, but there were also considerations of looking at other properties in the city that could possibly be developed for a city hall. So if someone thinks I misrepresented it, I'm sorry, but what happened next was at a joint meeting with the SHAPE committee and the city council decided to prioritize dealing with the library, the city hall, and the recreation center, which is why we are where we are.
Thank you. So with that, my thoughts are that next step is the options for process, and we're hoping, or we're looking to having something back before the holiday, at least a report back on where we're going with that.
I'm anticipating not only a report back, but a process by which you would set in motion a task force effort before the holidays.
Okay. So
meaning the later December holidays.
So looking at process, looking at finance options that would look at the full range from the lowest cost, if that's rebuilding on site, to a fuller option of 2 new buildings. In my opinion, whatever options we do can be green, can be creative, how they engage with the community, with the downtown, with the park. So if we're looking at a timeline that's going to come back to us before the holiday, the Christmas holiday or the December holiday, I think that's our next step. And so we'll take this information, digest it, and be ready to start moving forward at that point. Okay? So with that, I'm going to move on to the next item. Do we need to take a break at the up here? 5 minutes? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to take a 5-minute break and we'll be back. Thank you, everybody, for your patience.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you everybody for sticking around and your patience, and we will move now to item 10.2, which is consideration and discussion of the consideration and discussion of the existing no parking zone on Main Street affecting the residences at 1820, 1830, 1846, 1856, 1862, and 1872 Main Street. And this is prepared by Erica Smithies, our Public Works Director.
Thank you. I don't want to go too far into details to help those who have been waiting through this. I do have Jeremy Sills with Riker Spence, RSA Plus, in the audience to help assist with the study on this and provide the recommendations and options to the council this evening. We publicly noticed earlier this year for a public meeting on the recommendations provided by RSA Plus that we previously met, and I think it was in June or July, with Vice Mayor Doring and Mayor Ellsworth. The original safety committee was the comprised of the vice mayor and mayor at the time. No, excuse me, I get that wrong. Vice mayor and prior vice mayor. We're trying to discuss the existing Highway 29 alignment and the proposed realignment that was brought forward, I think, in 2015 originally. Now that Los Alcobas has been online for at least 2 years, we were revisiting this at a request of one of the property owners in August of 2018. So with that, I'll have Jeremy Sills come up and discuss the options he provided. We did have a neighborhood meeting that we hand-delivered notices in early September. We had one member, a couple of family owners, come to that meeting, and then we decided before coming back to council that we would try to renotice, send the actual study to all the property owners. And also, I provided email at the time, but I heard feedback tonight that some of the email did not get delivered, and some of the recent packages that were sent 3 weeks ago also occurred during the Kincaid fire and the power shut off, and mail was not delivered until about, I think, October 31st was when we got one of the feedback comments, the day of the publishing of this agenda. So with that, I'll let Jeremy Sills take on.
I was just seeing if we could pull up one of the images from the, so we can kind of look at things maybe. Is that a possibility? Okay. I'll stall. Jeremy Sill, RSA Plus, Civil Engineers in Napa. So, Los Alcobas, I'll try to talk just in general terms so we can see something potentially. But the reason for Los Alcobas, as far as not allowing the entire intersection to be changed, part of it is to the north side of the intersection. That's where the Elm Tunnel is. There's the bridge there over York Creek, and so changing that north leg of the intersection would require, per Caltrans standard, require a whole host of changes to the north. So Los Alcobas, that it didn't occur because we were worried about all these, it would have taken out several of the elms, would have taken out how to widen the bridge, things that were going to be pretty infeasible. And that's because right now the intersection is not Caltrans standard. It's the deceleration, acceleration, they're too short, right? It kind of fits in a space that is right there around that curve. So that's kind of what the reason was for Los Alcobas. So when we started looking at this, putting parking back in, what would have to happen is shifting the lanes to the west to allow the parking to be on the east side there. So doing that on the receiving side, on the north side of the intersection, you have to shift all of that to the west. So the first option we did for the packet was we shifted all that and we showed what the Caltrans standard was. And so you can see the paving limits, thank you. The paving limits are, they extend further out, they extend longer, there's longer tapers. So it goes, the bridge is not wide enough to accommodate the Caltrans standard. And then the Elm Tunnel also, receives part of that paving that's not there now. And so it impacts the roots, it impacts some of the trunks of the elms. And so it trickles down and there was it's not as desirable. The standard is hard to meet. So then we did an option where we looked at a reduced Caltrans standard, design exceptions required. And those can be allowed, but it takes a process through Caltrans. So the second option we prepared, can I control it or do you control it? There's a few of the, I know it's hard to see on some of these. Keep going. You can leave it here for a minute. So this exhibit, it's kind of engineering looking. I get that. The upper part of the screen is south of the Pratt intersection. Pratt is, to the top right, going down is Pratt. and going up is to Los Alcobas. There's that leg of the intersection. Then if you jump down, you can see on the bottom left there's the intersection there, and going right on the bottom of the page is going north towards Calistoga. And there's the bridge there, and there's the elms, and so the pavement is widened. There are some darker lines, but the pavement is widened to accommodate the standard. And then in the let me go to the next one. I think that's the next one. There you go. So in this one, what's happening is on the north leg there, we're crunching it down a bit. We're not allowing to have as much deceleration into the turn pocket. If you're trying to go into head south going into Pratt, make that left turn. It's all reduced. It's shorter lengths, smaller shoulders. There's Caltrain standards that would be required if we went this route, trying to push the lanes all over to the west, basically take the parking away from the hotel side and shifting it all over. So the hard part about this, I don't have a good answer for you. How easy is this? It would be let's spend money, let's design it, and let's send it to Caltrans and then process it through Caltrans and see if they'll approve our numerous exception requests. So we met, we talked about different options here, looking at these two, and what came of that was a third option. So maybe you can go to the last one here. And so basically leaving the striping on 29 alone, and then trying to accommodate parking using these parking pockets. So what this is, we show parking pockets. These are little bump out things on the east side of the highway there at the various property owners. There's not one at the corner because there's a bus stop and some other facilities there, and but they are, as you head further south, there's several parking pockets. So what this does is it allows us to leave the lanes where they are, not have to impact Caltrans and spend money on design that may or may not work, or Caltrans will allow, or impact the bridge or the trees. And then provide parking, and this could be an a la carte option, right? Not everybody would have to do it. If one person wanted it, you could potentially pick, hey, just this one property wants it, the rest don't want it. So it's kind of this option that allowed flexibility. But what this does require, right, is right now there's sidewalk there. There's curb and sidewalk adjacent. So you'd have to, the person that owns that property that wants the parking pocket potentially have to either an easement or a little bit of property given to the city to allow that parking pocket to exist and have the person pull into that space in front of their house. So this is where we landed. I think it's a good a la carte option. And the scope of ours was not to study the intersection. Ours was just this parking scenario. So I've seen emails and I've heard about the speeds, and I've heard about the crossing, and I don't disagree with any of those things. But we were hired just to look at the parking that was removed as part of the Los Alcobas project, which is what is the extent of my presentation here.
Thank you. Is there any initial council comment or question? Yep.
So this was great, by the way. So thank you, really clear and helpful. Now Caltrans is contemplating changing the bridge at York Creek, which presumably would be a wider bridge. Therefore, does that change?
I mean, it could. I don't have all the geometry. I mean, there's still a curve there. I don't know how they're changing it. I know the potential trails that could come through there as well.
I don't think they know yet.
Caltrans?
No. But my understanding is it's going to be wider. I don't know if
it probably would. I mean, usually that's what happens, right? I mean, I think it's pretty constrained now. You have the rock walls there. I don't know how much wider. I mean, I haven't seen the Caltrans plan, so.
So if it's wider, does that allow some of the options which are better for the residents to more easily be implemented without exceptions? Is my question.
Yeah, and it's hard for me to answer that without having the geometry.
Okay.
Just further that comment is that, as you know, that we just got presented with the preliminary environmental, and they're still waiting feedbacks. And one of our comment is that we should widen that bridge, but we won't know until they get into the full design.
Comment? Question?
I just have one question about the bulb outs. If I understand you right, the person who lives on the corner cannot have one because of the bus stop.
Yeah, my recollection.
Has anybody?
Yeah, there's bus stop. I think there's a fire hydrant, or there was a fire hydrant, and there's a few other things that.
My question is, has anybody talked to that owner? Have they participated? Do they care?
We do have members of the public here, and that property owner is very, I'll let him speak for that when it comes to
Okay.
public comment. But,
Okay.
it is important to note that I got a mix from mixed comments. Before the public meeting was noticed, I got mixed comments, feedback from both sides of the street. Because as you know, there's two estates on the other side that we also included. One would like their curb red, and the other one was, well, maybe not so much, but, thank you. They all want to hear about addressing the crosswalk. That was a very strong concern from the one member of the public that showed in the September meeting, and the emails about, what are you going to do to address that intersection, which that is a follow-up on that, separate from this discussion.
Thank you. Ms. Schutte? As well, if we know that Caltrans is going to be working on this bridge, and we know that we want to make safety improvements at that intersection, does that open up the conversation about how things would go forward? My one thought from going to the Caltrans meeting the other night on the bridge is that project wouldn't really begin to about 2024. Or 2025. So there's a couple years off for them doing that. So I don't know if that factors into our discussion. Is there any? So what I'm going to do is open it to the public comment at this point, and then bring it back after that. Is there public comment now on this item?
Evening, guys. My name is Matt Wilson. I am the lucky owner of the house on the corner, and I want to thank everyone, first of all, for putting this together. It's a difficult problem. I've lived in that house for 12 years, and please don't let the accent fool you. It's full-time, not just on vacation. I live there with my wife and my daughter, and we've had a lot of different experiences in that house since we've lived in it. I've pulled people out of burning cars personally. We've had cars come through our hedge. We've had all kinds of traffic accidents, minor and major. And we've also seen some pretty near misses, especially since the hotel has opened. And even walking across that street, it's relatively dimly lit. If I want to go up and have a cocktail in the hotel, it's unlikely that people stop first time. The parking thing, obviously we can't have a parking space given the situation around our house on Main. We also have enough parking spots on Pratt. So it doesn't affect me specifically, but I do think the idea of the turnouts, or what do we call them, the bulb outs, concerns me a little bit, because as you guys all know, the speed limit changes from 25 to 35 as you exit St. Helena. And I can tell you from experience, people do not keep it to 35. They speed up. We have a lot of people visiting the Napa Valley who drive fast cars and drive them fast the moment they leave town. So we're seeing more and more issues. Again, it depends on the time of day. There's a lot of traffic. There's a lot of slowdowns. But equally, as it gets dark, as people are coming back from my concern is with the bulb outs. If someone parks there, and let's assume for a second it's an Uber driver who happens to have found a parking spot while the owner's not there, well, guess what? If they don't look in their mirror and they've got a car speeding up leaving town, all of a sudden we could have a situation where someone swerves to veer into oncoming traffic. And that's really what concerns me for the safety of everyone in that area. I do think it's a matter of time, unless things change and unless the council's able, I think, to resolve some of these problems, that we are going to have a pedestrian hit. We are going to have a serious accident with a fatality, just based on my experience of living in that home. So, again, I'm not trying to be alarmist. I really want you guys to think about this as, you know, it sounds like Caltrans is up to their usual magic and going to be doing things in the future as well that we can't predict. So if nothing else comes out of this, I would ask you all to look very seriously at being able to improve the pedestrian crossing and potentially being able to install some kind of better traffic control for people turning left onto Pratt. And once the bridge is open, we're going to see way more traffic going down Pratt to get onto Silverado. That's all I've got to say. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for the comments. Is there additional comment?
Good evening, everybody. John Marshall. I'm here in representation for our entire family. Most importantly, this evening, I have to acknowledge I'm here to represent my mother, Paula Marshall. Matt, nice meeting you as a neighbor. I think we share a lot of the same concerns and thoughts. This was addressed by staff a moment ago, and I apologize. I'm not thoroughly prepared for this, and this is not the arena I'm comfortable in. I just received the package in regards to the entire situation that's obviously everybody knows about. You know, it's kind of funny. I kind of feel like maybe we lost the thunder here with the presentation before here. $64 million, $80 million. Parking is important. Parking is not important. Children are important for the libraries. All these things went back and forth. In very, very small scale, it all kind of applies to us, our family, and our property. Obviously, I'm here to discuss the left-hand turn lane problem. The last time I was here in front of this similar group, we talked about a lot of dangers with the red curb in front of the houses in question here. So I don't want to go back and discuss those. I think, and I appreciate the fact that I was heard and it was reacted upon, and that's why Jeremy is here this evening to try to come up with some solutions. I have some things to say. I'd like to say off my script here that I'm not here to offend anybody whatsoever, Jeremy in particular, or staff for not getting in touch with me. I understand things are happening, but I'm hoping we can iron these things out this evening. My name is John Marshall. My phone number is 650-583-6446, and my email is jmarshall@marcetti.org. I left some information the last time, but now I hope it's being recorded. I'd like to be contacted in the future about every detail going on here. We're talking about bulb outs here as a solution, and that is not anywhere near the solution that we're looking for. We're talking about, as Jeremy said, actually quite casually, the property owners will have to just give up a little bit of their property to the city. That's 8 feet by 41 feet in front of our front yard. It's about 23% of our existing front lawn area that we use all the time that we're here. It's about 18 feet away from our front porch, which my mother and her friends play cards on. I tend to have a glass of wine every once in a while there, and we have very small, intimate conversations with our family. I don't really want to have a car parked 16 feet away that close to our family. Matt brought up a situation that I didn't even really think about, is the Uber drivers. No offense to an Uber driver. I love what they do, and we use them frequently. But there's basically 2 parking spots in front of our house, and that would be a prime spot to park. That means we're going to have Uber drivers sitting in front of our house, hopefully chatting and enjoying their evenings together, having a cup of coffee, again, 16 feet away. We don't get a parking spot. We'll lose it. At 41 feet, I guess it's determined that we can fit 2 cars there. You can't fit 2 cars there. On the property next door, which is a much smaller lot, the bulb out design is 21 feet. This afternoon before I came here, I took my truck and I tried to park into a 21-foot slot, driving straight in and enabling myself to come straight back out, looking at my mirrors and trying to be safe. Can't do it. So, can I by chance have my mother's 4 minutes?
Yeah, I'll allow that, but please, if we can just
Well, I drove 3 hours to get here, unexpected, and I listened for an hour and a half about something real big, and I'm sure everybody's tired. So am I. And I don't want to be confrontational here. I just think we should be able to get through this.
Okay, I'll allow you to continue, but if you continue.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm happy to see there's concerns about pedestrians. I can see on Pratt they've reduced the size of the intersection there. I'm not sure how that came into the program here, because what we're talking about is eliminating a left-hand turn lane. That would be nice to make it safe for people crossing Highway 29 at Pratt. But the biggest issue we have is crossing 29. I did a project at the house not too long ago. We had in one day over 107 pedestrian trips across the road to fix our roof. Our neighbor had to use our driveway to work on his home. We can't not acknowledge the seriousness of the crosswalk on a highway. We have a very ambiguous drawing. There's a crest in the road for drainage. That drainage goes into the bulb outs. I don't see any drawings. I don't see any specs on drainage. So with these drawings, bid at $40,000 if I'm correct, to do these bulb outs, which there's no way, it's the business that I'm in, you can't do this project for $40,000, especially if you're going to add proper drainage. So what we'll have bulb outs with pools. I'm going to try to skip through a whole bunch of stuff here. I'm not... We already addressed the fact that I'd like to get contacted.
So, Mr. Marshall, if I could interrupt. So you don't feel you were contacted in the right amount of time to prepare?
I wasn't contacted at all.
Okay, so my suggestion then is that we relook at this and make sure that there's an opportunity for you to submit all of the concerns that you're bringing up now, and that we extend the dialogue. Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have any thoughts on sort of process?
No.
Okay.
I'm willing to listen to everything he has to say in writing or verbally, now or in the future. Both, frankly, is okay with me.
Okay. So if you'd like to continue.
I would like to continue. And I'm skipping pages as I'm going here, so there's a lot more I'd like to say. The design. I don't know what kind of skin or heart the designer has into St. Helena, especially our property, which I'm sure is zero, and I don't fault anybody for that. There's 6 properties. What I understand, there would be 5 owners that are affected by this. A workshop is something that I'm not an advocate for. I've worked for cities. I've worked in the same positions as this staff has. I've worked in all the departments, and the workshops are tedious. They're long. They're, like you said, getting people's opinions becomes very bureaucratic, and it puts one against another. We've got 5 people, 5 groups that I'm sure are all going to have the same agenda. We would like to be able to have that opportunity. The next time there's a design request or submitted, we'd like to be a part of that. I'll make myself available for sure. I'm not sure why we have to even have a left-hand turn lane. Sometimes it's a fact of life that we don't get that. The developer, who I believe is no longer with the organization, the hotel, made me a man-to-man, eye-to-eye handshake promise. He was going to build new driveways for us to accommodate our parking. He's gone. It's sold. And I believe now it's sold again, whether it's 2 times or 3 times. These are investments for people. We invested differently. It's not about the money at all. I don't see a reason that they can't solve their own problem. Their problem is traffic turning in to their driveway. They've made it ours because now they got everything they wanted, and we have nothing that we wanted or had. I guess it's just to sum it up, because I got beeped again. It's pretty simple to me. Behringer Brothers Winery has been there for 100 years or so. Somebody here can probably tell me better or different. There was never a left-hand turn lane necessary. They have a lot more traffic than the hotel does. I'm not sure what drove this left-hand turn lane. I would like to take red paint, do what the people across the street would like to do. I heard there's a so-so on one and an absolutely on the other. I guarantee nobody on our side wants the red curb. It shouldn't be $40,000, which it won't be. It'll be hundreds of thousands of dollars to do this proposed project here. It'll be $40 worth of paint, and the project is done. And I'm sorry I got an edge to my tone tonight. I'm just a little bit bothered with some of the things that I heard. There's no communication from Caltrans to the designer and engineer. Those trees have had arborist reports. They're dying. I can give you a report to tell you that those trees are beyond their useful life cycle. They're going to die. They're going to cause trouble. The bridge is inferior already. Why don't we just take that money that we're going to spend and put it to Caltrans and put some fire under their tush and have them move this thing on instead of waiting 5 years to do something that's apparently necessary? Let's get it done. This is impacting.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Marshall.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
We're approaching 9 p.m.
Okay, so we need to get a vote.
Need a motion to move beyond 9 p.m.
Is there a motion to move beyond 9 p.m.?
I move we extend for another half hour.
I second.
Roll call, please.
Councilmember Copperstein?
Yes.
Shuto?
Yes.
Newton?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Dory?
Yes.
Mayor Ellsworth?
Yes. So I'll bring it back to the council. My thought is, I'll hear everybody's thoughts. Any initial? I think we need to extend this discussion and not make any decision, in my opinion, tonight if the neighbors didn't feel that they were adequately given the opportunity to prepare. Is there any council thought on that?
Just I want to know, what did we do for noticing?
The first initial meeting, we sent out an email and we did we delivered hand hangers to all the properties that were affected by this. We only received one couple that was not in favor of swapping the red curb, but liked the idea of the parklets for others who would like to opt in. They did speak for, I forgot the last name, not Marshall, the corner of Pratt and Main. They did speak for that couple, Wilson, excuse me, the Wilsons. But then they came tonight to confirm that the comments made in the September meeting workshop we had. I did receive an email from Peter Edlin, which is the corner of Elmhurst and Maine, who he's kind of backed off on the red curve from the sound of his email. I believe I forwarded that, or that was, the mayor was copied on that. But he was in favor of improvements at the crosswalk. And then the other neighbors I've not heard from.
Okay, thank you.
And we mailed the most recent one we mailed on the 23rd or 22nd of October, the study, because that was requested of Mr. Marshall in September. They said they couldn't have made the meeting. I thought that was the feedback I received. They couldn't make them, would like to see the study.
Mr. Knudsen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since the good citizens and property owners have arrived, I think we should have a discussion, but I hope that then we can continue it to a further meeting for whatever the decision might be. And may I add that I'm curious about the potential to simply remove the left turn in abeyance of waiting for Caltrans to improve the bridge, which will become a wider bridge.
That was a mitigation measure for the project to go in.
So that was done. Now it's a couple years later. We can change. We don't have to. That was a condition for the project, but we could make a change at this point, could we not?
I think maybe you'd have to look at what the traffic study did that warranted the lane being put in the first place, and maybe some updated traffic count might be in order to see if the traffic materialized that was projected. I don't think we can just eliminate it, though.
The CEQA document that was used to approve the Las Colbas Hotel would potentially need to be updated as well as part of the results from that traffic study, especially if that turn lane was a mitigation measure.
It's such a bad intersection. Behringer, the bridge, Pratt, the hotel, the residences. It sure would be lovely to, particularly since they're redoing the bridge, wouldn't it be lovely to meet Caltrans standards but also respect our residences? I just wonder if there's a way that we could lobby Caltrans to allow a reconfiguration of the bridge that would allow us to reclaim the parking for the residents, and then everybody wins, right?
Next couple of years, I think this is before us because some request was made to do something about the parking, and so this is an option. But I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying. I just think it's 3 years off, 4 years off.
Is there a path of possibly pleading with Caltrans to say we have a safety situation that's accelerating, that's getting worse quickly, and could we move up a project that's a sort of comprehensive look at the whole area?
We have a separate conversation forthcoming, I think scheduled for December 12th, related to the intersection, right, which is a separate issue than what we're focused on tonight. What we're focused on tonight is a conversation about parking that was initiated by the marshals that led us to invest in a study to examine initially just the thinking of swapping sides, and then a third alternative that was identified in that study by Riker Spence. And so we have options in front of us, and what we heard tonight is that the swapping requires some concessions from Caltrans, and it's a question mark about whether or not they would actually approve those, and they have control over those decisions. But I think importantly, to your point, Mayor, there is a separate but concurrent conversation and active thinking about the intersection itself from a safety perspective that's coming soon.
Okay. You have any thoughts?
Just that I'm interested in that conversation, but for tonight, I was thinking, for my opinion, 1 and 2, I didn't want to go forward for the reasons that were stated in here. I was open to option 3, but now we're hearing that I didn't think through the safety issue and also the Uber issue, and if the owners don't want that and that's not a solution that's positive, then I don't think we should do it.
I'm terrified. In the time that I've lived in town, I'm terrified of another pedestrian fatality, and it behooves us to not have one. And this is such a dangerous section, and I actually believe by taking out the parking in front of the homes, we've actually accelerated sort of the raceway aspect of getting out of town, which I think has made, once we open Pratt, it's going to make it more dangerous. And I just wonder if we could condition our participation with Caltrans on the new bridge that would allow a configuration to, even if it's a couple years away, at least we'll get back the residents to the place they need to be, and perhaps we'll also improve the safety of that intersection. With Pratt, I can't imagine that. I mean, Caltrans is its own entity and its own beast, but they are very safety conscious, and I can't imagine that our requests at this early stage regarding the York Creek Bridge might not be very receptive to those folks.
We have a degree of options for that intersection from a traffic signal on down, and certainly I think we anticipate that some form of enhancement to the crossing is going to be needed and should be needed, and it sort of ranges from enhancing the intersection to a full signal at the intersection. And that's part of the conversation. I mentioned December 12th. It's actually December 10th that we're anticipating bringing you some information that we've been working on that speaks directly to the intersection and improvements there. So I think the new news, which wasn't available at the time of the initiation of this study, is that Caltrans was looking at that bridge, and considering a widening project, and I think it does, frankly, introduce new options for us. And the city will certainly have a seat at the table, and I think some influence over how that shapes out. So I think there's some interesting opportunities coming, but I think there are opportunities to enhance the safety of the intersection that are easier to do now, notwithstanding if there was ever a signal concept introduced, that would be a safer option for the intersection, but it's a longer conversation for Caltrans.
Is there a potential for having a Caltrans representative here on December 10th to participate in the conversation?
We can certainly ask.
Okay. To me, that December 10th conversation is going to inform having that will help us figure out how to move forward here. That's my suggestion, is that we have that meeting and then sort of continue this conversation at that point, just because I think we're going to need that information.
I think that's a fair resolution for tonight.
So is the objective to see whether with the bridge improvement, it's possible to move to one of these other options that, as far as I know, still has the turn lane, but would allow the parking to go back
Yeah,
on the east side?
With the new Caltrans look at the bridge, it may open something up that wasn't considered before.
I just wanted to mention that we Jeff and I had these conversations when we last met with Caltrans when they did their second presentation in our community at Grace Church. These are issues that were brought up by Mr. McKelly, and I brought them up with everybody there who would listen, that this is a much bigger project than just those bridge rails. And they seem to be somewhat receptive, at least listening to us and working with staff to try to make more improvements. It's in their interest, frankly, from a legal point of view, financially, but mostly legal. That's why they do these kinds of renovations of bridge rails. It's not necessarily for aesthetics, I can tell you that. So they are receptive, and I think we need to continue down that path and bring them to the table and say we have many more interests here. And frankly, Los Alcobas made a number of promises that they would participate in some of these improvements at the intersection, and they should be held accountable for those promises.
Maybe we can have them at the meeting as well on the 10th, or invite them. So if that direction for us to go forward, I think we have, and we appreciate the public coming and the comments, and so it looks like what we'll do is we'll go forward to the December 10th meeting and gather more information and discussion with Caltrans and see where we go from there. So thank you for coming, and yes, please, Jeremy.
I just wanted, if Caltrans, let's say we play that what Caltrans does, say, yeah, we can widen and incorporate it. I guess my question would be, does all six